Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon. I'd like to declare the meeting open, and for the benefit of people watching the broadcast, I'll read out the following. The Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance to coronavirus regulations and the remote meetings protocol agreed by the Council, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of broadcast. The Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and they use the facility to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so. And remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the Council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purpose within the Council. So thank you for that. So if we go straight to the agenda, I think item number 1, apologies. Have we got apologies?
Councillor Mark Spencer, Chair.
Okay. Anyone else?
No other apologies received.
Thank you. Okay. Any declarations of interest? I imagine not. No. Okay. Okay. So that takes us straight on to item number 3, which is the Public Service Board PSB Wellbeing Plan 2020 to 2021. Now I know we've got numerous PSB members, which is fantastic, and I thank you all for attending. I believe Steve Ward will do the Newport offer. Sorry, Beth. Sorry, it's yes, I believe Steve.
Sorry, Chair. Apologies, I interjected. Then I was on a different conversation. Apologies, Chair.
That's fine. Honestly, that's fine. Steve Ward will be doing the presentation about Newport offer, but also the right skills, etc., going through the whole appendix. I know we've got different partners and different members going through them. So what I would suggest, and if it's okay, I don't want to sort of stop-start meeting. So Steve, if you can present, and then if we go through the appendices, and at the end of it, so I think there's a few pages on each. At the end of it, the committee will then ask questions for the whole presentation, if that's okay. So really, Steve, it's over to yourself.
Sorry, Chair, would it be okay if Will Beer did an overview of the report ahead of Steve? Will Beer from Health, and introduced all the partners that are present to the committee.
Do you know what? As long as we get through it,
thank you.
It's all fine.
Thank you, Will.
You can crack on, no problems at all.
Will, are you on the call? Well, that didn't work, Chair, did it?
I think I can see Will.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got you, Will.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much. So, yeah, if it's okay, Chair, I'll introduce each of the PSB members today. We're going to talk about each of the cross-cutting interventions, but just, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, got you.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Sorry, there's a bit of interference on the line. I think that's better now anyway. So, but what I'd like to do before we get into that is just give you an overview about the Strategy and Performance Board. So this is offers a group that sits beneath the PSB, and the role of Strategy and Performance Board really is to make sure that as a One Newport partnership, we're acting consistently with the 5 ways of working, and that our overall strategy to improve wellbeing in Newport is firstly long term, which is that's really about trying to balance some of the short term outcomes we're trying to achieve for people in Newport while safeguarding outcomes for future generations. The second thing is around prevention, so that's making sure that people have got the best start in life and they've got the right opportunities to realise their full potential, not just focusing on problems in our communities. The third one then is around integration, so that's about making sure that all the actions that we take as public bodies are complementary and mutually reinforcing. The fourth then is collaboration, which is about always working in partnership and doing that even when it's very difficult, and making sure we don't retreat back into our organisational silos or just merely seek to serve our own organisational interests. Sorry, Chair, I'm speaking quite candidly here about what we're trying to do. And then the last one is involvement, and this is quite important to me. I think, we need to be involving as diverse a range of people as possible in this and trying to always come up with community-led solutions, focusing on the things that matter to people and building on the assets that we've got within Newport. So there's a sense of us trying to be honest to those 5 ways of working within that strategy and performance group. The other thing we do is we look at whether the step changes required to meet the wellbeing objectives are actually on track. So you'll see in the reports there are a number of sort of indicators that tell us whether we're on track and whether we're likely to achieve those wellbeing objectives. And again, I think that's really important for us to be held to account by the public. But also, we feel that this committee is part of that public accountability, which is why we're all here today. So without any further ado, then I'd like just to introduce firstly, if I can, Steve Ward from Newport Live, who's going to talk about the Newport offer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Chair. Nice to meet you again. Chair, would you like me to share the scorecard for the progress on the Newport offer? Sorry, I'm not quite. This is my first meeting that I've done. I've come into the hot seat here, having had the Newport offer joint leadership handed to me recently, and I know the leader can't make it this evening. So, having done scrutiny many times before, not quite sure on your protocol this evening. So I have the scorecard in front of me. I can share my screen.
Yes, Steve. As long as you can share it, and there's no problems from your end. I've got no issues. I don't know anyone else from the committee, but I've got no issues as long as you're comfortable using that IT, Steve, and doing it.
Oh yeah, I'm very comfortable with that. If I'm not comfortable now, I never will be. So hopefully, if you can give me a thumbs up when you can see the screen.
I don't know if it's my age, but I can see it, but I'm not sure if I can
make it out.
Yeah, I don't know if Councillor Marshall, can you see it, Councillor Marshall?
Yes, but if Steve could maybe zoom in just a small bit, like Control Plus a few times. Yep,
not that much.
That was a rotation, not a plus.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it rotated. There we go. There we go.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Let's start again. So the Newport offer, just to bring you up to speed and talk through the scorecard as is. You'll see the first measure of success there, that One Newport was that first PSB to sign up to the placemaking charter launched in September. So during COVID, as much as that's been a limiting factor, it's also been something that this group I know has endorsed, and one of the elements has been very much challenging the way we've been working and thinking. Secondly, you'll see another measure of success was the city achieving the purple flag status. And without going into too much detail, we know that the pandemic has had a significant impact, unfortunately, on the nighttime economy. It's obviously been reflected in work that council colleagues, police and fire service, together with business reps, have been doing to ensure that the city and the street scene centre has got a visit safe message. It's been a challenging period, and I'm sure colleagues can pick up on this a little later, but it's a status that's been achieved, which was set out for the Newport offer. I think really importantly, the next point is around the community wealth building programme. So that supports the long-term economic growth and seeking to work with local suppliers to retain spend locally. Now, I know there's been some seminars and some workshops around that to integrate the wellbeing objectives and wellbeing goals to ensure that in a simple context that we keep business local and that long-term economic growth stays within Gwent, and there's a partnership there on a regional basis, which is starting to work well. The next point you'll see on the screen is the focus has been on the city as a destination. Now, as you can imagine, COVID has been a challenge, but there's been an established website with Visit Safe, trying to give the message out, and prior to this most recent lockdown, that started to have some impact. I can speak candidly about that in trying to bring events to the city as well, even under the Tier 4/Tier 3 guidance. So it's starting to gain some more traction and some greater hits to that Visit Safe webpage. And having this afternoon come off a call with Welsh Government, it's certainly been reflected that that's an example of good practice that the city has got. The next point, Chair, is rather an easy one for me, and this is me falling on my feet today. So in the interests of the Newport offer and making us trying to take us towards a carbon zero, reducing the carbon in the city, a huge energy installation was done during the COVID period on the roof at the Geraint Thomas National Velodrome. So we believe it's the biggest install in Wales. It was working so well that subsequently the council took a decision to implement a similar scheme at the regional pool and tennis centre. And we can go even further than that there's additional works being done to reduce carbon further with new LED lighting solutions, and we've secured some additional funding which will be offered tomorrow to bring even more low carbon lighting into both the velodrome, the pool and the tennis centre. So some positive moves in that direction. And then finally, you can see there another one of the key achievements, supporting tourism and the rural economy. So taking those projects forward, there has been a film which, when you click through on the intervention, you'll be able to see a destination film bringing people towards Newport. And again, that goes hand in hand with a Visit Safe philosophy. And I think Chair, what you'll see with the Newport offer to date is an all-encompassing approach, which almost sat across the top of the different work streams of the Public Service Board. And I'm sure your Chief Exec will come in a moment together with the leader. The discussion has been around how do we now refocus, how do we take this forward in another context. So I've been given the privileged opportunity of joining now to go forward. So I'm reporting on things really there that I've not been engaged with, but to go forward, to develop new performance indicators, to develop and ensure that we engage with the widest sector. So the Newport offer is appealing to all residents, all citizens, people outside of the city to come in and experience the city, whether it's education, whether it's employment, and to ensure that this city demonstrates that it is a great place. It is a world-class destination on various fronts. And Chair, the final point I would also make is one of the biggest step changes I've seen as a result of COVID and the innovative meeting that started back in June using digital tech was the engagement of the Newport Youth Council. So in bringing young people who will shape the future of the Newport offer to become consultees and partners with this innovation and intervention board. So they will start to review the Newport offer and the steps to go forward to ensure that they're part of planning the long-term sustainability for the city and how that links into the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, because ultimately I'd like to say it's in their hands, Chair. So that's been a very positive and innovative step, I think, which was actually brought forward by the leader, and everyone has embraced that. And meeting with some of those young people from the city, genuinely inspiring. And we need to listen to their needs. They need to help with that, with their voice around regeneration and placemaking. So not only businesses and partners, private sector, public sector, working on the redevelopment schemes, including, the ones which have just been undertaken by the council on the new leisure facility. So if I use that as an example as well, it demonstrates that the council and back with the Public Service Board is actually reaching out to the citizens and asking them, what do they want to see? How do they want to see it designed? Where? And creating those high quality places for the benefit of communities. So, Chair, there isn't a huge amount else I can offer this evening as coming in newly into this role and reporting on this scorecard, but it's certainly something that when taking on the role, I'm a passionate Newportonian, and what will be important to me is that we make progress. We work together, and as we go forward now, we review the Newport offer intervention with the partners, and that will include things such as, scoping out that living wage, potential for it to be a living wage city, embed placemaking charters in all the PSB work, but importantly to ensure that the Newport offer is relevant to everybody in the city, not just a few people, not just the people who read these papers into your committee or into other boards. It's very much about being relevant to everybody. That's it from me, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for that. So who are we now, Steve? Who are you going to introduce?
Sorry, Chair, it's Will again. Just I've got the batting order in front of me, so we can. I think we can move now to Steve Morgan, who's going to talk about safe and accessible green spaces. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, got you, Steve.
That's excellent. Hopefully I can be joined by a colleague of mine, Harriet Bleach, as well, who I'll introduce as I go through the dashboard. I will share my screen as well. I'll try and share my screen in a minute so you can see the dashboard. But if I may, because I'd like to introduce myself to you. I'm Steve Morgan. I work for Natural Resources Wales, but obviously I'm here as a PSB member today. I've taken over recently the Green and Safe Spaces intervention lead and the PSB rep role from Kerry Davis, who you'll know from previous scrutiny sessions. So Although I was involved in Newport PSB early doors because Newport was an early adopter of the new ways of working with public service boards, it's been a couple of years since I've been directly involved in Newport PSB, and I remember it was a difficult time leaving, and now I'm sort of rejoining the PSB. I've been really impressed with the work that I've seen already. So actually my first PSB, or for the second time, if you like, will be in March. So I haven't yet sat on a PSB for a couple of years, and I'll be obviously leading the Green and Safe Spaces intervention. So I'm really grateful to get the offer to be here today, because as a PSB member I get so much out of these sort of scrutiny sessions, and I sit on a number of other PSBs as well in Gwent. So I'll talk, if I may, to the Green and Safe Spaces Q2 dashboard, and if I'll try quickly to share my screen, and if it's successful, then you'll hopefully see the dashboard, and if not, I'll stop sharing. So can you see the screen, Chair? Yeah, I've got it. Can you that's it? Yeah, got it. Is that okay? Okay, it is, obviously this is in the packs as well. This is obviously the dashboard for Q2, and my colleague Harriet, who's here, will be able to pick up on any specific questions, because I said I'm relatively new to this intervention. A few things I wanted to highlight, if I may, just a few reflections before I just go through these sort of one by one. I already, I've caught up with Kerry Davis, who's been the NRW rep at the PSB for the last couple of years, and I've obviously had discussions with Harriet, who's the new Green and Safe Engagement Officer. That's been in post since June, and the first key achievement and success that's reported on the dashboard there is Harriet joining us. And I've been blown away really by the number and the quality of partnerships and the size of the network that's developed across all of the interventions and the reach of those interventions. So, and I'm saying that as somebody that sits on a number of public service boards. So immediately kind of impressed with what's been achieved, and I just wanted to sort of share that reflection, with you, that I've picked up over the last sort of month of my involvement. Other key achievements and successes to note, that the projects that sit under the intervention have expanded in number and have developed quite well, despite actually the impact of COVID on the project. It's actually given an opportunity for quite a bit of development work and bidding for funding, grants funding, etc., for a lot of the projects. So there's been quite a bit of work on all of the projects, and we've highlighted a few in the dashboard here around the Lysart community garden work, the Main D Unlimited Main D Triangle project, and further down the Green Arc project, which we can discuss in a bit more detail if you want to. The network I particularly wanted to mention, the network that sits under this intervention. You'll see on the key performance measures actually that the initial target that was set for the number of partners that we wanted to try and join the network, well, we've well exceeded that in Q2, and actually the numbers have grown beyond the 119 that you can see there as well. So a real success and this is largely down to Harriet's good work in drawing that network together, is the number of partners and community groups that are now joined that network. We set out to issue e-newsletters, so new publications. We laid out that ambition, if you like, for Q2, and we've now done that. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the 2 editions that we've now produced. The first of those was actually in November, which is after Q2, but the ambition was there in Q2, so that's up and running now. There's some great projects if you want to look at some of the detail that that are mentioned in those e-newsletters. I've mentioned the Green in the City Centre. The Green Arc project is one of many projects that's developing. The green infrastructure mapping work is developing well. This is about mapping the green spaces in Newport, and there's been some funding to support that work. The funding proposal was submitted in Q2 for the green prescribing and scoping work, and this is an example, I think, of an area where the interventions are working well together, and we're working well together with other networks. So the Integrated Wellbeing Network here, working with, I think it's Marietta that leads that work for Newport in looking at some of the opportunities around green prescribing, but you'll see the links between those sort of green prescribing and the green spaces as we enhance and create more of those. The big bit of work that's been undertaken by Harriet and the team, the network, has been the refresh of the vision, if you like, for the green and space intervention, but also the steps and actions to deliver that. That was put today to the performance and strategy group, so we'll hear more in future scrutiny sessions, I'm sure, about what's been agreed. But there's some proposals there to relook in the context of COVID, of climate and nature emergency, and also green recovery from COVID at the intervention and the actions that we had. So we've done a refresh of that, and we'll bring that back to a future scrutiny session. The risks, we had identified risks back in for Q2. My view would be that these risks haven't really materialised. There's two there at amber and one at red. The lack of participation from partners, well, that was a risk clearly, but that's not been realised. You'll see from the numbers of people of partners that we have now in the network. So you know, that's certainly not an amber risk now. Green space is not sufficiently protected in the planning process. Well, I mentioned the green infrastructure mapping work that's been undertaken, and I think the challenge for us now is to look at how we can use some of that mapping work to influence the spatial planning kind of processes in the future, to protect and to develop those areas through the planning process. So I think there's a lot more work to be done on that. So I think it remains a risk, but there's certainly the evidence piece that that we need to start with is well in development, and I think will help inform future spatial planning decisions that are undertaken. And the last one there, which we identified back in Q2 as a high risk, which was around COVID-19 impact and the impact they may have on the network and the intervention. Well, I think Harriet and the team have done a great job in working virtually with the network. The online communications has developed the support. The Green and Safe network has developed in number. So again, that risk, I would say, hasn't been realised. And I mentioned before around the actual delivery, risk. Well, my understanding and is that the kind of lockdown period has refocused some of the work of the projects, and as I said, there's been an opportunity, if you like, to work on development and funding for those projects, and that's been successful. The key performance measures, top right on the screen, they speak for themselves, really. I think the point I would make on these is that there's one there that was red, and that was the number of the workshops that involve the wider network that we had last year, and that was red at the time. But we've now, we had a workshop in November, and we've got a plan for 3, this calendar year as well. So that's definitely not a red risk now, although it was at the time. So the dashboard kind of measures look quite green. There's definitely work that we're undertaking here to challenge ourselves perhaps more. Though some of those targets, I guess, are measures, not easy targets to achieve, but they're easy things to measure. And we're looking with a bit more scrutiny, if you like, on how we can not only measure the kind of the numbers as a kind of a proxy for performance, but also how we can measure quality of the work and the partnerships and the delivery as well. So we'll be looking to change those performance measures or improve them probably before the next scrutiny session as well. I guess the last point I'll make about the plans for the next quarter, which of course is now behind us as well, all of those areas of work identified there have progressed well. Integrating the wellbeing benefits from the green space, and there's a lot of work with the community hubs that's been undertaken now by the network. The upcoming online workshop session, so that was the workshop I mentioned in November, where the network is growing and growing, and informing and driving the work that the intervention is focused on within the goals that we set ourselves. So there's this kind of collaborative and co-productive approach that's involving citizens, and not just stakeholders and other stakeholders and partners, which is really important. Expanding the green in the city centre. I think this is a big challenge, I think, for Newport, but a great opportunity as well. There were 6 sites that have been identified for green space enhancements, and we can look at those in a bit more detail if you choose to, and that work is continuing as well. Green flag applications, well, we have the 5, 3 full and 2 community awards that those are likely to hold the accreditation, and I think we're likely to see more, probably not until January 2022 now. But I think the green flag awards that are held now will hold through as well. So there's definitely work being undertaken and an ambition to get more green flag applications in, and I think we'll see some more come January 2022. And there's a specific reference there to a community space project at Bellevue Park, which has developed now in collaboration with Be the Change organisation as well. So hopefully that was a helpful overview of performance in Q2, a lot of which has moved on obviously since then, and more than happy to take questions at the appropriate time, supported by my colleague Harriet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Steve. Very much appreciated. Will.
Thank you, Chair. If it's okay, if we could move on to the Strong and Resilient Communities intervention next, because I think it dovetails really with what Steve has just described. And I'm here today for Nicola Prigodic, who's one of the leads for this intervention, who unfortunately can't be here today. And I'm not sure if I introduced myself at the beginning, so I'm going to put my camera on. My name's Will Beer. I'm one of the consultants in the public health team. Obviously been heavily involved with the pandemic over the last 12 months, but chair of the Strategy and Performance Board and employed by an Bevan Health Board. So this intervention is really about bringing together community groups, voluntary organisations and public bodies to work together much more on a place basis. So rather than coming up with top-down solutions across the whole of the city, this is about looking at different communities and how we can work on a more local basis in partnership. So that's partly about making sure there's resilience in communities so that they're able to cope in times of adversity, but also supporting those communities to really flourish and build on the assets, their naturally occurring assets in those areas. I mean, that's been quite a challenge during the pandemic, because with lockdown restrictions and closures of many of our public facilities, so, community cafes, community centres, the council's own neighbourhood hubs, I mean, the first being Ringland, a lot of those now have closed, as well as, libraries, and they often tend to be the focus for community action. So that has been quite a challenge over the last 12 months, and certainly over the first 2 quarters of this financial year. And one of the things that we've been doing is to look at the impact of the pandemic on different parts of the community that have both been most adversely affected during the pandemic. So we've done a sort of community impact assessment of the pandemic and looking at those groups, particularly those with protected characteristics. And we probably have all heard in the media that the pandemic has had a disproportionate effect on, for example, BAME groups, and has actually widened health inequalities in some areas. So we've been looking at that and trying to mitigate the impact of that. Another project that we've been running is around participatory budgeting. So I think some members of this committee will have heard a bit about this before. So it's your choice, your voice, your port. We're calling it participatory budgeting. And this was initially piloted by, I think colleagues might remember, in Gwent Police in Ringland. There was some funding available through the Home Office to tackle serious and organised crime. So we've built on that now, and the Health Board has put in 150,000 to develop this a stage further. And this is about communities coming together to actually vote on the things that matter to them and the kind of community projects they want to see happening in their area to meet local needs. We're trying to do this online. It usually would happen in a big community hub where you bring different groups together and they all vote on what projects they think are most suitable for the area. But we're going to have to try and do that online at the end of March, so that's scheduled. The focus for that, Chair, will be obviously on COVID recovery. So I think we've had a very sort of medically led and public health led approach in response to the pandemic, and we need much more of a focus on social rebuilding and recovery over the next 12 months. So that's going to be much more of a social endeavour than a medically led approach, and communities obviously need to be front and centre with that. In terms of place-based working over the, we've made quite a bit of progress over the 12 months prior to the pandemic. So we'd formed wellbeing collaboratives in Ringland and in Pill, and that's really brought together anyone that really cares about that area and wants to improve wellbeing for people living in those areas. And it's not just about people having the help to access services. It's also been about building on those assets, those naturally occurring assets that I mentioned. And that's some of the physical assets of some of the buildings, but also the people, the community organisers, the community leaders, the volunteers, the sports coach, people that are active in their local area, as well as some of the green spaces that that Steve mentioned earlier, so parks, woodlands, and making sure that those activities are all mutually reinforcing. So one of the projects we've actually had funding for is around social prescribing, which I think Steve touched on earlier, whereby rather than the GP reaching for the prescription pad, if someone is presenting with anxiety and depression, they can actually put them in touch with a local community group that maybe does a Nordic walking session once a week, or has got activities running in the local woodlands which might be quite therapeutic. So we've had funding for social prescribing. So that's the sort of thing that's sorts of projects that come forward through those place-based collaboratives. And then the third area I just wanted to touch on is around volunteering. So I think the pandemic has really brought out the best in so many people. So whether that's volunteers or civic groups, people that have been supporting others through lockdown, and it's been, this word is often overused, but it has been quite humbling actually, I think, to see. So people have been, for the most vulnerable, out delivering shopping, collecting prescriptions and medication, and making sure that really no one gets left behind during the pandemic, and also supporting people that have been shielding, and it's been really tough for those people. So I think one of the things we want to do going forward into the recovery phase is sort of building on some of that civic activity, if we can. And at a time where the NHS, the public have been asked to stay at home, the NHS, social care, and third sector organisations have really stepped forward, and I think that's something to be really proud of. So I think that sort of gives a summary of pretty much what we've been doing around strong and resilient communities. We've also noticed that there's been quite an issue with digital exclusion, Chair. So there's been this huge sort of digital transformation in the last 12 months, but we know, not everyone can access resources online. So again, that risks widening inequalities. And we know certainly older people in deprived areas, not necessarily affording the tablet and the phone, but it's paying for the broadband. So we're working with Digital Communities Wales just to make sure that, again, we're not widening the gap in terms of digital exclusion. So that's also going to be a focus. I think that's going to be with us for quite some time into the future. So that's our update, Chair. Did you want to take questions right at the end?
Yeah, we'll take it right at the end.
Yeah.
If that's okay. Well,
okay. In that case, then I'll, if I may, I'll introduce Nicola, who's covering for Guy Lacey, who's principal of Coleg Gwen, who's going to talk to you about right skills. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members. As Will said, I'm actually standing in for Guy Lacey today because unfortunately he's been taken unwell today with a migraine. So I support them in their work. I coordinate the right skills work with them. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the board, I think, because the board is really keen on collaboration and involving partners with the relevant knowledge and skills. So the board is led by Guy Lacey, but the second lead is Steve Tyler from the Gwen Association of Voluntary Organisations, and then the board that they lead has a number of PSB partners on it. So it includes Coleg Gwent and the university and the council, and also the health board as an employer, I should say, as well. So we've got some employer representation. But then other partners that are key to sort of the skills agenda, and those include Careers Wales, Department for Work and Pensions, Third Sector Partnership, and a number of others as well. So the partnership has worked really well over the last year. It started to work well a couple of years ago, but it's really come into its own in the last year. And as I say, really strong focus on collaboration. One of the key things that they've been doing over the summer is to review the right skills work, and that is in the light of COVID impacts, but also taking account of the recommendations that the Future Generations Commissioner has put forward in her annual report. So that work has been really useful. One of the key things was that the members of the board felt that there was maybe too narrow a focus just on economic well-being, and that should sort of be expanded so there was better integration with the other wellbeing objectives of the PSB and also with the other wellbeing goals. So there's now a focus not just on economic well-being, but on social well-being, cultural well-being, and environmental well-being. And so what's come out of that is 3 key strands of activity, which we have an action plan for and which we're taking forward. The first one of those does relate to the economy. It's about skills to support long-term economic growth sectors, and one of the activities within that is included on the dashboard, and that is a reference here to planning for a virtual digital careers week for Year 9 pupils. That has really progressed well. Very, very good collaboration between the council, the university, Coleg Went and Careers Wales, and also with the private sector. So we now have what started out before COVID as a plan to have a physical careers event with the regular kind of physical presence by employers. We had to change direction on that, and now we have a virtual event, which is this month. Next month, mid-March, and it's apt because we are promoting the digital sector, and we've taken our event online now, so it actually works from that point of view. But it's also been really good in terms of enabling involvement by key companies in the city. So we're talking about the digital sector within Newport and the sub-elements within that, the subsectors within that. So cyber security, software engineering, future tech, creative, 5 areas that we're looking at. And each day during the week, we will have key employers talking about the kinds of things that they do. So kind of exciting things that the digital sector in Newport produces that young people might not be aware of. But then also typical jobs that they have available, career opportunities, the day in the life of an employee at, for example, SPTS or Newport Wafer Fab or IQE. We're really pleased with the employer engagement that we've had on this. The sort of the key companies in the city that you would expect to be part of this are part of this. Some of the smaller innovative entrepreneurial companies are also taking part. And then it's actually aimed at Year 9 students and above in schools, and they will have the opportunity to virtually put their own questions to these employers and get the answers that they're looking for. So yeah, that's coming up in a few weeks' time, and we're really pleased. At the end of it, it won't just be synchronous. Young people will be able to speak to the employers as a live event, but then afterwards we will have retained all this material. So video material, presentations, Q&A sessions, and then this is actually an ongoing resource that the young people in Newport will be able to access and understand really the scale of the opportunity on their doorstep in the city in the digital sector. So that was looking at long-term economic growth. The second area of work is relates to reducing disadvantage and preventing disadvantage and increasing equality of opportunity. And there's a couple of examples on the dashboard of that area of work. In particular, the NEAT work, the Youth Engagement and Progression Framework. This is about helping young people not to become NEET. So in years 11, 12 and 13 to make sure that they are not in a situation where they're not in employment or training or education. And that's been really successful. The last year we, as reported on this dashboard, Newport was the second lowest in Wales in terms of Year 11 NEETs. So that's a really positive success story. Another project that's mentioned there on the dashboard is one with the film sector. And again, that's about disadvantage, but it's also about underrepresentation in a sector, in the creative sector, which is also a really positive sector for Newport going forward. And the aim of that project is it's aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds who are not in employment, in education or training, and are disadvantaged in some way. So they, it could be a range of disadvantages. And then taking them on, sort of making them aware of screens, film and TV sector type opportunities, but also potentially leading into a proper training programme called Foot in the Door, which Film Cymru run. This again has had to have a change in direction because of COVID. Originally, it was a day with people doing various roles within the film sector, anything from carpentry up to film director, producer, actor, all right the way through, and then followed by a location set visit the next day. However, we've had to go virtual with this as well, and now the set visit will become a virtual set visit, unfortunately. But we felt it was important to try and deliver that as a pilot this year. And then hopefully we'll see how that goes and maybe potentially make that a bigger project in the future. The third area of work is really about expanding the focus of skills beyond employment and economic well-being. So it's focused on adult learning, community learning, and helping people to have a life well lived. So it will contribute to social well-being, cultural well-being, environmental well-being. So this work is just starting because it's new to the intervention, but it could build on the digital literacy work that Will mentioned earlier. It could include carbon literacy within existing education programmes, so people are more aware of their carbon footprints. It could potentially involve more Welsh medium skills development. That is an area that is still to progress. But one of the projects within that on the dashboard is the Reach Restart project, which is based at the Central Library and involves two elements really. It's about English as a second language to overcome any language barriers that refugees might have or migrants might have. Also employability skills and signposting to other services as well. So yeah, I think that covers the main projects that we've been working on to date. In terms of risks, we've got lack of buy-in from providers or learners, but that hasn't been the case really. As I say, it's been really, really positive in terms of collaboration on the board. In terms of performance indicators, the NEET indicators on there are actually at the Welsh average. We weren't sure what the impact of COVID might be, so they've been set at the Welsh average so to make sure that we're at least in line with that. The Reach Restart indicators, one marked down as amber there, that's really that has been due to COVID and people not being able to access to use facilities like the Central Library. We expect that to really improve. Last year targets were well exceeded, so we don't expect anything different this year. Yeah, and the second one there is green, as you can see. And then as part of the new activity, leads of the various activity strands will be developing new performance measures that we can include. So that's it from me until question time. Thank you.
Nicola, thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the last presentation will be on sustainable travel. So we were hoping that Kerry Dorr for Newport City Homes would be here today to present on that, but unfortunately she's not been able to make it. So we've managed to find some of the stand-ins who some of you will know. So I'd like to introduce Chair Bev Owen, who's Chief Executive of Newport City Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm neither Kerry Doyle nor Craig Lane, but yeah, and members, apologies because all members probably sick of the sight of me from various discussions on a daily basis. But yeah, sustainable travel, and all I can say is we've had a strategy and performance board this afternoon, and I'm really excited about the energy that sits across the partnership board, the PSB at the moment. It's there's been, despite the crisis that we've all been through, there's been significant progress made over the last 12 months on a number of the agendas. So the scorecards will have been shared with the partnership scrutiny meetings. I don't intend to share those, but obviously 3 steps within the sustainable travel agenda. On the first, in terms of the PSB becoming the champions of sustainable travel, then the Gwent Healthy Travel Charter was signed off in November last year as part of the Climate Wales Week, and 23 organisations have now signed up to that, which is excellent news. And that encourages staff across all of the PSB members to travel to work in a sustainable way. And when you think about it, if there's 1 in 3 employees across the whole of Gwent that are working in the public sector as PSB members, then there's quite a significant proportion of the working population. So within that charter, there's the 15 ambition commitments, which focus on everything from cycling, agile work, and the use of public transport. And I think it's important to note that obviously this year in particular, it's an opportunity for all partners and the PSB across Newport to reset the agenda. The world has changed, so we need to grasp the opportunity that this dreadful pandemic, that it is the only opportunity it's given us because of everything we've all been through. But so that's one nettle we should grasp as a result of it. In terms of the second step, in terms of the environment where public transport, walking and cycling are prioritised, there's been 6 key areas of work that the PSB is focused on. There's been a significant public awareness campaign, which is focused on videos and public consultation, heavily orientated around the active travel network, and there's a consultation currently ongoing around that. And there's been lots of improvements in relation to the active travel network around 14 locks, Coedmelling, Corporation and Corporation Road and Nash Road. And the authority, again in partnership with its PSB partners, has submitted applications for further funding to improve that network throughout 2021. Work has been concluded, or is concluding, sorry, in terms of bike hire, feasibility and scoping work. And that's also been a significant recommendation within the Burns Commission, obviously, which I was a part of on behalf of Newport City Council, which in a way addresses some of the risks that are also included in the scorecard about the Burns work being integral to the work of the PSB. Schools, a lot of work has been underway in terms of the St David's School project, and 3 schools across Newport have been taking part in the active travel programmes. And also applications to the Safer Routes in Communities Fund have also been submitted. The supplementary planning guidance as part of our development planning process, that's also been updated in 2020 to include supplementary guidance on sustainable travel. And it's really pleasing to note that Newport Transport, obviously, which is we are shareholders of as Newport City Council, now has 16 low emission buses in service. And I'm really pleased that today I was sent a picture by one of my colleagues of the first EV refuse truck in Wales, which is due to be liveried up very soon and will be launched next week. So I'm really pleased that that's been achieved. Moving on then to step 3 in terms of the encouraging the use of ULEVs, charging points. So these have been rolled out across the city in key points across a number of the city's car parks. The EcoStars scheme supported organisations to reduce fleet consumption. So again, coming back to what I just said in terms of the council's purchase today, and the recruitment phase of that is now complete, and we're now working on capturing the metrics and emission savings to be an evidence base for future schemes for rollout in 2022. And the final part of that obviously is around taxis. So there's a pilot due to take place in Newport, and we're currently waiting the details from Welsh Government And in addition, we're also working with Welsh Government in terms of charging points for taxi ranks as well across the city, one in the west and one in the east. So a lot of good work has gone on in terms of sustainable transport. Being frank, I can't personally take any credit for the work of the PSB in chairing that group. However, you know, the City Council has been an integral part, I feel, of delivering that journey, and certainly there's a thanks to Emma Wakeham and part of the partnership team and City Services as well. So I think, Chair, I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of the scorecard. It's been circulated, and happy to try and answer some of the questions. As I said, I'm not Kerry who chairs the group, but we will endeavour to do our best. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Bev. Will, is that all presentations?
Yeah, yes, that completes all the presentations, Chair. That's right. I think it's quite a testament actually to the fact that this is, you know, this is really now integrated, and that we can have so many different partners step in at the last minute and cover this agenda. So it does really feel like it is an integrated and partnership approach. So yeah, so we're happy to take any questions now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Will. Okay, what I suggest to the committee, which is going to be great for Steve Ward, but not so good for Bev Owen, is if we go through questions for each section rather than jumping from one to another to another to another. If you're all agreeable for that. So if we start off with questions to Steve and obviously who else wants to come in to answer regarding the Newport offer, if that's okay. Is there any hands up?
Can I come in there? My hands up doesn't appear to be working.
Councillor Berry, you've come in.
But
your voice is as good as your hands up. So yeah, Graham, if you want to start, Councillor Berry.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm a great advocate of the scorecard. I'm sure you know me historically, and I thrive on them. I love the colours, the reds, the greens, and so on. But can I just ask for a little bit of enhancement there? Rather than show the blocks, can you also show which way they're trending? So something could be green, but it could be trending down, right? Or it could be flatlining. It just gives us a chance to focus in on everything, because if you're just a green, that means that you're on a borderline. And if you're not careful, you're going to go over into the other grounds, aren't you? So it's just an observation, please, to make the data look a little bit easier for us to dig in. OK, hope that helps.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Graham. I'm just checking for a sec. Is anyone else got their hands up? Is it not happening? Not helping? Not working for everyone? Or is there no questions? Moving on. Steve, Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, Chair. I did send a message actually to Jason Clark. I should have sent it to you. I'm clinging on. I'm just about in and out of the meeting. There's a lot I can't access on my laptop. I've had issues. I had to miss the last meeting. We've gone with Sky Cube. It's the worst thing I think we've ever done. True story. So if I appear, disappear, I'm not the Scarlet Pimpernel. I am Kevin, but I'm having these issues. So just bear with.
Councillor White, we know you well enough, and you've gone. Okay. Any questions, Councillor Marshall?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So question mainly is, we're talking about the COVID recovery. Just want to kind of know, along with the tourism side of things, where we see ourselves moving forward, because obviously people will be nervous going out and things like that. So how are we going to start selling ourselves as we go into that recovery, please? Thank you.
Chair, for myself, am I in?
You jumped in and jumped out again, Councillor Whitehead.
This is obviously an issue. There's a couple of points. I mean, if we can make some points now as regards green spaces and whatnot. Yeah.
I think, Councillor Whitehead, I did want to do that, but I think because of your situation, jumping in, jumping out, I think it's probably we get as many points off of you now, just in case you have to jump out again. If that's like, far away. There's only a couple, Chair.
The Green Spaces project, I'm all for that. I asked a question many years ago on behalf of my ward. because there are projects in the pipeline that we'd like to do around green spaces. We never did quantify. I did read a document once that Bettis was actually short, believe it or not, on green space. It was never quantified, but I did read that in an official document. I'd like that, objectified and underlined, because there is talk at the moment with even other people outside bodies that we'd like to do something around green spaces. So for me, I would like to quantify what are the green spaces on Bettis and are we still short of them. Other than that, I'd like to say the neat news is tremendous news. Being as again, I can only allude to Bettis that famously we've always been married into the neats, but to hear that progress and that we're number 2, I just think that's really good news. I mean, obviously, then on top of all the PSB, the whole impact of COVID, I don't think it'll be quite so obvious until restrictions are lifted and everything becomes live. I mean, the virtual world has its bonus points and its plus points, but also it does as it is. I like to interface with people and the negative impact of it. So I think a lot of our RAGs, for instance, the colour coding system there, when that activates, when we're interfacing with people, that might jumble about a little bit and impact. And as regards Public Services Board and the services within, during the COVID pandemic, trying to liaise with a lot of these service board members has been quite frustrating. And again, that's just a general comment that lo and behold, when we get out the other side, all these things will become right. But well done everybody on the work thus far.
Thank you for that, Councillor Whitehead. I know Councillor Marshall sort of asked questions. Can we reply to that, and then also to Councillor Whitehead's question about the green spaces?
Chair, Steve Ward, I'll try and take a question from Councillor Marshall, which was relevant to some work I was doing today. So I managed to speak to the Minister with portfolio for leisure, culture, tourism today and his officials, and we were asking about Wales's control plan. So there's a clear control plan to come out from COVID now, and we're currently in Tier 4. And there's a plan all the way down to Tier 1. What they haven't released as yet is they've released what is in each tier, so we can see if we pull up the plan when accommodation settings can open. But what I learned today is even when you go into Tier 3, they're also then going to have a mini tiering system within each tier. So not everything will come back with a bang at Tier 3 or at Tier 2 or Tier 1. So Tier 3 will be staggered. So there's been a request today from multiple sectors that can we potentially get a timeline which is somewhat similar to what's gone over the bridge now. So at least we can have an indication as to when we can start some of that work, because then the tourism sector will clearly need to market, and if it's ticketed events, they'll need to go on sale a period in advance before. And similarly, getting the confidence at this moment in time with Welsh Government and Public Health Wales is a challenge. And I say that from experience this week as well, with events which are related to tourism, and the concern at the moment, Chair, because of the new variants, and their information is relatively young. I was speaking to Rhys Thomas, your environmental health manager, yesterday, and there's a distinct lack of clarity over the new variants and how they spread. So what that is doing, to answer Councillor Marshall's question, is really just kicking it into touch at this moment in time, until we know what the opening plan is in those various tiers. So defer to the control plan. Hopefully there will be some more clarity around from Welsh Government again this Friday, and there may be some further support for the sector, which is announced in the Welsh budget next Tuesday, together with the UK budget, which is then next Wednesday. So we can expect maybe the coronavirus job retention scheme information next Wednesday, and some other schemes coming forward which have supported the sector, including tourism, on Tuesday.
Thank you for that, Steve. And Councillor Marshall. Oh, sorry, Councillor Marshall, are you happy with, or would you like to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks, Steve, for that answer. It's mostly just obviously concerning about the current situation and making sure that all partners are working together, both private and public, to try and get what's best in this really difficult and challenging circumstances. Thank you. Chair, you've muted yourself.
Yes, sorry. I know Councillor Whitehead's question was regard to green safe spaces. We'll come back that to in a second. I see Councillor Hughes. Did you have a question with regard to Newport offer?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. It's a general question on the Newport offer. We've got, two sections there, certainly with carbon reduction and tourism. I'm just wondering, a lot of the groups that grow up in the community, and it's not part of the community-led one necessarily, I'll come back to that later, but a lot of the groups grow organically from volunteering and activism and stuff on very grassroots levels. And we've got some, some really, really good examples, I think, in Newport of things that have worked really well between the local authority and different groups. In Killeen, myself, I've worked with the Tourism Forum and a community project to sort of raise money through a calendar for the Christmas tree. We've got lots of similar projects with litter picking, and we've got sort of partnerships in Newport with companies like EGNI, the solar agencies, which was highlighted in the regional committee that we both attend, Chair, that as a really sort of groundbreaking, excellent example of partnership between sort of the sort of renewable resource sector and Newport, where they acknowledge Newport as being one of the best local authorities that they work with, and also the work that they do in turn with going into schools and teaching children. And so there's lots and lots, and I'm sure every councillor, a colleague of mine here, could sort of knock off another 5 or 6 off the top of their heads. What I'm thinking is there a way though that we can sort of bring all those partnerships and sort of even if they're sort of beginning to a central point, so that and the reason for that really being is that there might be people thinking of an idea, say in my ward in Killeen, where a similar project has already happened in Malpas. We've already got a good sort of project maybe already happening, so that project then could teach and learn new projects wanting to sort of rise from the grassroots level, and they'd be able to know where to go to get help from the council as well. So rather than all these smaller projects all over the city sort of reinventing the wheel all the time, where we have really good examples of success, then I think it would be a really positive thing if we could sort of put them all in one place so people could go to them, and also it shows residents in the city the incredible work that is actually happening at ground level. It's just a point really. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Steve, would you like to come back?
Chair, sorry, Chair, can I just interject there while I can regarding Jason? He is spot on. We formed Pride in Bettis because of the inspiration of Paul Murphy and Pride in Pill, and it would be fabulous that all these little groups kind of linked up, because we share ideas. There's sharps training, there's all sorts. So I think that's actually a very good suggestion, Jason.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can, I think Councillor Hughes makes a really good point, and Councillor Whitehead has topped it really when he talked about linked. If we look at something like LinkedIn and how that brings then business people together, now I think some of the things from COVID we need to take and say, how can we digitize some of those experiences locally? And that could be a repository. Now, digital isn't the answer for everything, but it can be the go-to that people can then gather information. And you're right, whether that be mentoring and opportunities, it's certainly something that can go in. What I do know is the leader is chairing a group next week, and some of that is a result that the board for the Newport offer is a result of previous feedback from Scrutiny and the Future Generations Commissioner's annual report, to actually say, is the Newport offers is it right? Is the vision still appropriate? Should it change, especially given the impact of COVID? And I mentioned digital then, everything, the digital superhighway has really lit up in this period of time. You know, what is the desirability of a focus on sustainability, as you mentioned, Councillor Hughes, and the future generations, and where should that be? So there's going to be some work on that, and any learning, any challenge from Scrutiny now can be taken into that to say, how can we build that into the tapestry that needs to be the Newport offer? Because the conversations yesterday with the leader and the chief exec, it did get down to you know, the local residents. So how do local residents feed into that Newport offer and feel part of it, feel proud of it? It's not just for businesses, it's not for the council, it's not just for the stakeholders on the PSB. It needs to resonate with our local people in every community that we've got. And also, really importantly, I know I mentioned it in my reference at the first point, is young people and them having a voice to influence us, because we're in those positions where of responsibility and accountability.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Jason, you happy? Yeah.
Absolutely, Chair. Thanks very much.
Okay, I've got Bev. You've got your hand up.
Yes, Chair. Steve's covered quite a lot of what I was actually going to say, so that's fine. It's captured. I'd just like to ask the policy team, can we pick up on those action points? And also pick some of those issues up around repository and learning across communities, particularly with Garvo as our partners, please. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Bev. I see no hands, any more hands up regarding Newport offer. So I can't see any more hands up there. So we've gone to green safe spaces. Stephen, Harriet, can you come into regarding what Councillor Whitehead mentioned, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? So, firstly, Councillor Whitehead, thank you for the question, and thanks for your support for the Green and Safe Spaces work as well. That's really appreciated. You did mention that you sometimes find it difficult to contact PSB partners and members. So, you know, please contact me if you've got any specific ideas, which you clearly do. There's a few things I'd say about the kind of green spaces and green infrastructure. I mentioned the project, and I'm sure Harriet will help me with a bit of detail in a minute, to map the green infrastructure that we have. So that green spaces, so we know, you know, the accessible green spaces and where it is. I mentioned a project which is the Green Arc project, which is looking at you know, enhancing and developing green spaces in the city centre, and there are sort of 6 sites that have been identified there. Actually, a lot of those along the riverside. But there's more opportunities, I know, and you know, what we'd like as a network is to hear about those opportunities, to hear about those ideas, and we can support the drumming up of the, you know, the support, the funding, and try and develop those ideas into something that's, you know, long term and sustainable. One of the things for me that, you know, COVID has really highlighted is how much people appreciate green spaces and access to you know, to green spaces, and also it's highlighted you know, those inequalities that Will talked about, that Will talked about earlier on, and one of those is about you know, perhaps some of the more deprived areas not having the access to green spaces. So I think there's a lot more scope and a lot more work we can do here. I would certainly like to develop you know, a kind of a list of interest and ideas, and Harriet will hopefully confirm in a minute what's in scope at the moment and what we need to sort of develop as an intervention to ensure that we get, you know, as many green spaces as we can in as many parts of Newport as we can. I don't know whether, if Harriet's with me, whether you wanted to add anything, Harriet, specifically about Bettis or the wider sort of opportunities.
Yes, hello everyone, hi Chair, and hello to the members. So in terms of Bettis in particular, a bit more detail, the Green and Safe Spaces is, you know, I'm working with Bettis Early Learning Community Group there, and also exploring opportunities with organisations like Coed, Lleol and Groundwork, who would bring woodland wellbeing activities there. So that's in sort of early stages, because there is woodland to the rear of the housing in Betws that is Natural Resources Wales owned and managed, which is a good opportunity to open that up and have activities in that space. And also, I think, as far as my understanding is, a lot of the sort of managed land in Betws is Newport City Council, Newport City Homes, so they're obviously key in that. But I think generally there's opportunities to improve access to the green space that's there and enhance the open spaces that's there as well. There's those two opportunities. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just supplementary on that? Thanks for that, Harriet. I think 2 points really. One is identifying what is our green space. Albeit the irony of it is, a lot of people often say to me, Kevin, your absolute Betws is surrounded, likewise Malpas, by greenery. You've got the canals and blah. I say, you're quite correct, but what the pandemic has exposed, then, if you like, exposed might be too harsh a word, but what it has highlighted is where can our residents go, because farmers are like, where do you think you're going? Well, I thought I could, because there's green space and there's official green space. I think that's my point. I'd like quantified our areas where we can access and where we can't. And maybe we can do this through the hub. The hub guys on the estate, I have to say, are fantastic, by the way.
Thank you, Councillor White. If I may as well, I mean, I know that from talking to Harriet that one of the next steps of the green infrastructure mapping work will be to try and develop some sort of portal or an app that so that those sites that exist, and of course those that are developed and enhanced, will be made known to the public, so you will know where these sites are. And how they're accessed as well. So it's really good food for thought, and appreciate the input. And we'll keep you informed of how that progresses as a result of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I've now got Steve Marshall, Councillor Steve Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points. One of them being on the green and safe spaces, where we're looking at the various funding proposals submitted for different things like walks and apps of green sites and that. I know recently a lot of people are trying to do off the couch to 5k, off the couch to 10k, and just want to know, is the Public Services Board doing anything internally for staff, but also publicising public routes? What is a good 5k route, what is a good 10k route, and things like that there, and maybe issue that out and see if the Public Services Board staff can take part in it and things like that, and maybe look at ways of maintaining it, or litter picks and stuff like that, trying to engage a wider spectrum of how we should look after our community. And the other one is walking groups, about the whole kind of the whole COVID recovery, about picking up again, because some people go out and walk in groups and things like that in the green areas, but unfortunately, due to the restrictions, they can't obviously formulate a group or be at certain points at certain times, because that would constitute as a larger group, and that is their bonding session each week potentially. And just how we can get around that and things like that, how we can promote it, maybe of saying, look, grab a friend or grab someone else, or like a walking buddy. I don't know how that would work, or if there's anything in the background to that. But the other one, then, if Chair will allow to digress, is basically when we're saying about green spaces. I think a lot of it, and I know it's cliche, but it starts at home. Gardening is one thing that people love to enjoy, and something that they spend a lot of time, and it does take a lot of things off their mind, and time flies. Is there anything that could be done to maybe promote that amongst things, and try to maybe look at how the PSB can move forward, and looking at ways of saying, this is great to plant in your garden, maybe do this, maybe do that, to maybe start, we're going into spring now, is the ways that we can start building it up, because that would help some of the other factors like public mental health and things like that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, Harriet, if you don't mind. What I'd like to know is because, as I said, I'm still learning about a lot of the projects that are underway at the moment. We've been asked about the Couch to 5k, the walking groups, and the sort of the green space at home. Is there anything that's currently in the intervention, that we think covers some of that? Because if there is, it'd be great to showcase that now. But if there isn't, I definitely think it's something that we can consider as an intervention team.
Yes, so the I think yes, we could certainly promote the Couch to 5k more. I think it's sort of started to do that in terms of some of the social media, but I think yes, that could be certainly promoted more, as well as the gardening activity at home. The early version of the Green Directory map that we have does show up the amount of sort of private gardens there are and which ones are considered sort of quite green and which ones have potential. So that's that's a lot of land that has a lot of potential there. So certainly we could promote a lot more of that. There is an idea in the pipeline about providing some sort of home growing food kits to people just to get them started and get that interest going. But yeah, certainly a lot of opportunity there.
Okay. Sorry, Will, did you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Just on the strong and resilient communities intervention. So I think Steve mentioned Marietta Evans earlier. So one of the things we're looking to do, which is where these two agendas overlap really, is to look at what's called green prescribing. So not everyone will have access to a garden. So we're looking at things like community gardens, community allotment schemes where people can come together. And there's a growing body of evidence that actually, as the last speaker has just mentioned, that being out in the natural environment is really important for people's mental well-being. So yes, we are looking at that, and I think probably, as I suspect Marietta has been working with you on that, Harriet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Marshall.
That's fine. That's answered my question. It sounds like there is work undertaken or things to be added. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you again, Chair. I would appreciate, Steve, if I could actually have a moment of your time sort of later in the week, or if you could drop me an email. There's some things I'd love to discuss with you, really. But is there what's the opportunity? Because if you look at my ward, for example, in Killeen now, green space is highly sought after, and there's always a risk of development. When we have places that we need to protect, what's the opportunities for us actually creating either a community land bank or actually a Newport City Council land bank to protect those zones that we actually want to keep free of development? So, I'm not saying that we want to encourage development in certain places. Obviously, we've got our development plans, but there are also that sort of green belt area, and when those areas come up potentially for sale, that we could actually look at purchasing those so that those areas are protected for, historically, for as long as we need them to be protected, so that we're actually, if that makes sense, that, the green spaces that we have, like I said, in my ward now are very, very rare. So when they do come up, it would actually be maybe an idea for us to actually think about how we can actually land bank those ourselves as a local authority for future prosperity, if that makes sense. Is there any way we can start exploring things like that?
I would be really open to exploring opportunities for that. And protecting those green spaces is always a challenge, and there are different ways of doing that. We can do it through through influencing the sort of spatial planning work that can be done on a national, on a regional, on a kind of local scale. I think ownership is clearly a way to protect, and we work as a partnership and as NRW as well with a lot of designated sites and sort of protected sites. So obviously there's one of the challenges around resources and the availability of funding to purchase land. But I don't think we should rule it out for that. I don't think that in itself is a blocker. So I'd love to explore the opportunities and what we can do as a partnership to look at, particularly where there's parts of Newport that don't have as many green spaces that are accessible, or any green spaces at all in some cases. So I'd love to explore it more. Again, I'm gonna if there's anything in the pipeline now, I'll probably have to ask Harriet. But what I'd really like to do is to try and find a way of identifying and not missing those opportunities as they present themselves. So I think it's a great idea, but I think resources will be a challenge, but not a blocker.
Absolutely understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Linton next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me? Hello, yes? Okay, yeah. Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank everybody firstly for their presentations. It's been really enlightening. a few of my questions overlap a lot of you really with the green spaces and the health issues around that as well. See, England at the minute, the horse is bolted regarding the green spaces. We've got a lot of building works going on, which is really good, which we want as our housing. I just want to know what we're going to be doing. I know there's talk about more allotments in the area in England. I was asking for some allotment spaces to be put, myself and Laura. I don't know if you can update me on the progress of some new allotments in the area. Also, going on now, regarding, we used to have some really good sport in youth teams, such as the Hardridge Old School Boys Rugby and Spencer Boys. Spencer Boys is still going, but we need some more space. Where Hardridge Old Boys, they've got a field, but they need a base. Now, what are we doing as a partnership to try and help these get their club together, because they want to bring on the youth as well, all the youngsters for the rugby. So it's been really difficult. I know Laura's been trying. They can't seem to get a venue for them. All they want is a little lock-up where they can have their little clubhouse or something and get together after a game and during a game for changing. So really, that's why I want to know what we're doing as a partnership towards England and for the youth and everything like that, getting together. I know also that we do use the woods. We're having a lot of anti-social behaviour with fly tipping in the woodland area, because I was part of the walk, the walkways. So if you can update me on what's happening in England in regards to that.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I think sort of rather than just to link England and individual clubs, I think it's just as a general Newport clubs as well, sort of the spaces. Now I know I've got Bev wanting to come in, and I think after Bev, if Will can come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to say, just in response to Councillor Linton's queries there, which are ward issues, we can pick those up. So we'll make a note of those, and Councillor Linton will come back to you on those specifics. And I'm sure that Will wants to talk about the wider partnership, because what I'm conscious of, I can, as a council, we can answer some of those this evening, and clearly this is more about the partnership. So I'll allow Will to talk a bit more broadly, but Councillor Linton, just to say that on those ward specific issues, we will note them, and that the relevant officers will come back to you as well. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry to bring it up as a ward issue, but we was all speaking about the green spaces and the like, and I just wanted to make sure that we are covered on the green spaces, because we're running out of green spaces, and that'll be part of the planning development as well in the future. Just want to make sure we don't lose any more green space. Right, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Linton. No problem at all. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But Will, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just a couple of things we've been trying to look at through the Wellbeing Collaborative in England. Firstly is around sort of getting kids out and walking short journeys rather than using the car. So we've been looking at things like safe routes to school to keep kids out walking short journeys and using the natural environment. I know as part of the Ringland Master Plan, there was, I'm not sure, I've been a bit out of touch with it for the last 12 months, but I think the plan was to sort of relook at the sort of multiple use games area there. And I think within the new Ringland Hub, the neighbourhood hub, there was provision for Spencer Boys for like a changing facility, a designated area within that hub. And then lastly, in terms of the woodlands, I think that the plan was, certainly when I was last involved with Ringland, was to look at, particularly with this funding around participatory budgeting, is to look at what we could do with the woodlands, because I think that has been an issue in terms of antisocial behaviour, and maybe sort of replicating what was done in Dufferin with Dufferin Link, and sort of working with the community to kind of reclaim the woodlands. I think that was a sort of really good model down there in the west of Newport that we could potentially replicate in Newport. So Holly Butterworth, who I think was Harriet's predecessor, was working on that before she finished with Marietta. So certainly, Councillor Linton, that's something we can look at, when restrictions are lifted, at getting you involved with again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Will. I see no other hands raised. So really, we come on to yourself, Will, now again with the strong, resilient communities. Any councillors? Any questions? Okay, is that none?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
Chair, can I just say one thing to William, if I can?
Yeah, of course.
Hi, William. I just want to say I totally agreed with what you said around the need for projects to sort of lead on the organic sort of growth. You know, that it's not the local authority leading. That what we're doing is sort of supporting those groups develop. And I think, you know, that is really, you absolutely nailed it, I think, on that one, really. It's about, you know, we've got lots of very, very good green groups sprouting up all over the sort of city, really. And I think, you know, our job really, I think, is to help them thrive, really, and not sort of actually come up with the ideas ourselves, you know. So I thought I really agreed with what you said there. Thanks.
Thank you. That is the ethos. It's something I feel really strongly about, actually, community-led solutions, co-production.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Right, moving on, we've got Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just on strong resilient communities point. Obviously, we are aware that in the communities that there's a huge impact, unequal impact across the board. So some areas are richer areas and things like that around the city, they're not having as much COVID, where other areas are, and certain ethnic minority communities. When we're coming out of the recovery, just where are we going to stand moving forward, especially with the socio-economic situation, but also the fact, again, of people and families coming together, wanting to meet, building that confidence together to rebuild our communities, to get them working and functioning again, that we're not so, you know, kind of so used to being isolated in our homes in front of a computer, if that, and how we move forward, please.
Yes, I fully agree with that, and that's definitely the part of our work programme for the next 12 months, Chair. So it's as I said, I think the idea really is to bring together on a place basis, whether it's Ringland or Pill or Bettis or Dufferin or wherever, these collaboratives of like-minded people that want to do the best for their community. But I think that needs to be as diverse a range of people as possible to reflect the sort of demographics in the local area, to make sure no one gets left out or left behind. So that's certainly what we'd be looking to do over the next 12 months. And as I said, in just prior to the pandemic, we were making quite good progress with Ringland and Pill, and the intention was to roll that out to other areas to sort of coincide with the local authority opening up the neighbourhood hubs, which we thought would be a really good focal point for that kind of community activity. So yeah, that is absolutely the intention. And I think there's definitely going to be quite a lot of fear, I think, about people venturing back out again, and also understanding, as Steve Ward mentioned earlier, with the restrictions lifting at different times, what they can and can't do in the local area. So we need to work really closely, I think, with the communities to work through all that over the next 12 months, Chair.
Thank you, Will. Councillor Marshall.
That's answered it. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, can I just make a point on the hubs?
Of course you can, Councillor Whitehead.
I think one thing, I suppose, because positives, as we all know, have clearly come out of the other side of the pandemic, and for me, I suppose it shone a light on the work that the hubs do.
Sorry, is it me or is it Councillor Whitehead's frozen?
We've lost him, Chair, yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll come back to Councillor Whitehead if he comes back on. No other questions I can see, so if we move on to right skills with Nicola, any questions? Okay, no questions. I think that there we go, Nicola. And sustainable travel, and do remember, as Bev said, you know, she is standing in, so she may have to come back with questions, but any questions regarding travel?
Yes, please, Chair.
Councillor Hughes.
I think it's going back to, you know, we've been through a very difficult time as a city, and you know, in my ward certainly, you know, we've been in a situation where we've seen dolphins come up the, you know, right up to Killeen. We've seen sort of really sort of blue skies, you know, and what we don't want to do really is just sort of see everything as a negative, and actually try and build on some really positive things that have happened, really more people going out walking, all that sort of stuff, and actually not go backwards, you know, completely. So I think it's really important, and I think certainly I don't think it'll be a shock to Bev to hear that, you know, in my ward, transport is probably, you know, pretty much top of the list along with air pollution. And I think part of that sustainable thing for me is often people think the solutions are the big solutions, you know, bypass roads or tunnels or, you know, bridges and all sorts of things. But very often, you know, the solutions are very small things, and getting people to change small habits. And, you know, one example which we've done as a city, Bev, I think, you know, in Killeen, 57% of the traffic pollution we knew was coming from buses, from our own public transport. We've put electric buses in there. It's going to have a big impact in the long run, you know, and I think it's acknowledging the small changes make a difference. One of the other things as well is that, you know, that up to 70% of the journeys made in Killeen are short 2-mile journeys. And I think, you know, a lot of that is obviously linked to things like the school run. And I think it's really about mass education, really about getting people to think about their habits as well. I know the council have a big part to play in lowering reduction and of air pollution and all that, and I know we've got our the things that we have to do, but it's also about changing people's habits as well, to sort of get them to think about how they can do things differently, and that the small things make a big difference, you know. And I think that's where I'd like to see some of the concentration, and I know we are doing it with sustainable travel. It's not always that big picture, and I know we're sort of really stuck in some of the big issues going on now with the M4 and everything, but you know, we can do really massive changes in society just by thinking about some much smaller things, if that makes sense.
Do you want me to reply, Chair?
Absolutely, Bev, yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Hughes, having also supported the Killeen ward for a number of years, yeah, you know, particularly within Killeen, but you know, across the whole city, you're absolutely right. This is about generational change, and similar to the conversation that was held at the Scrutiny meeting last Friday about the new ways of working, which are also fundamental to sustainable travel and to climate change more generally. Now is the time that we as an authority and our partners have to grasp the nettle. And I think you are right, is that, you know, the sum of smaller parts will generally have a greater impact than individual significant changes. And, you know, as members will have seen during previous discussions, you know, the big chunk of the Burns work was heavily focused on active travel, and, you know, rather than, as you said, the big sort of systemic changes. Yes, you know, public transport, interchanges, etc. But certainly as we move towards the work of the Burns Delivery Unit, the active travel network will be a huge part of that. But hearts and minds, campaigns, and winning people's understanding and belief in the ability to, you know, to make those little journeys on foot, on bikes, massive part. And I know that through Kerry Doyle as chair, the Sustainable Travel Group, you know, that's one of the sort of key planks of the agenda that they've been pursuing. But what we're also trying to do is, you know, and I'm sorry, this is a partnership agenda, but I can't speak to a partnership agenda without speaking about the council's work. You know, within the next 2 weeks, there's a whole organisation wide officer workshop taking place as well, about, right, what, you know, what are we as a council doing, what just looking for bright ideas, because it'll be those germs of ideas that translate into transformational change. So absolutely, and I will make sure, Councillor Hughes, that your comments are taken back to Kerry, and, you know, we'll make sure that in the next iteration of the annual wellbeing action plan that those comments are taken on board.
If you could as well, Bev, we've got really interesting groups setting up, you know, they're organic groups like Green Killeen now setting up, and they're actually thinking positively, you know, they want to work with the council. They've split the groups themselves up into sort of different sections, litter, transport, air quality. So they're actually thinking generally about, you know, and I think it's tapping into that. I think we've got some great opportunities now to actually support the local residents across the city, not just Killeen, but in actually finding some solutions themselves as well, you know, in that sort of organic sort of growth, you know. So I think it's quite exciting. I know it's very huge challenges ahead, but it's quite exciting as well that, you know, the approach is going to be very sort of public led as well, you know.
Definitely, and coming back to Councillor Whitehead's points and Councillor Linton's, exactly, we're in a we're in a different world to where we were 30, even 20, 10 years ago, where the council or any individual organisation as part of One Newport cannot do by itself, and we are heavily reliant on community participation and mutualism to help us get to the goal that we need to. So I'll certainly, on behalf of the PSB, take some of this issue back to Kerry and then obviously feed it back into the broader PSB agenda. Thanks, Councillor Hughes.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Before Councillor Marshall comes in, Councillor Whitehead, are you back?
Chair, you're on mute.
Steve Morgan, do you want to come in before Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to demonstrate that the Councillor Hughes's points, I think, are really well made about behavioural change and active transport and how transport infrastructure is used differently. I think this behavioural change is absolutely key to this. I mean, of course, there are things we can do about making public transport easier and, joining timetables from different types of public transport, etc. And I think the thing about behavioural change is understanding what it is that people need to change that, to change their behaviour. What does it take? And I think this is a great example of where our interventions overlap. Sustainable travel with the green and safe spaces, particularly on this one. We're looking together at air quality, carbon reduction, and active travel opportunities. And I think the idea of having kind of community-led ideas about what it takes to change behaviours, what are the journeys that people make, how, why do they choose to jump in a car or whatever, and what do we need to do as a PSB to support that, that behavioural change. That's absolutely key to getting this to work. So I'm really, really keen to work, with other interventions on this, but also with, the community to make sure we capture those ideas. So I just think it's a point really well made, Councillor Hughes. So thank you for making it.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Marshall.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Question is mainly around the fact of using electric vehicles. So basically, we kind of said about the whole PSB is looking at how we become kind of more efficient at utilising the electric vehicles moving forward. I can't remember the date that was noted, but my question is, as we're kind of increasing the more reliance on electric vehicles, are we doing anything to kind of look at renewable energy sources in order to offset that and not rely on fossil fuel energy and things like that, to make sure that we are continuously making the good effort and it's not counterproductive on that side? And just something that popped into mind, I think it was Steve Morgan that just popped in there, about public transport. Is there ways that people would be able to have on their tickets, like on a lot of other things when you're finding stuff like that, like because you used this bus today, you have saved so much CO2 emissions, or even worked towards green points, because we all have like coffees and stuff like that there, and we get our 10th free coffee. Is there anything over so many journeys to try and like have a type of thing that way to try and encourage people to use the public transport? Is like that green points, because obviously people change behaviour if something hits their pockets, and that's one of the things that we can look at potentially amongst partners, and welcome to hear from partners what they suggest. Thank you.
Sorry, Bev or Steve.
Chair, if I can come back in terms of the renewable energy. Yes, we are working with partners on an area energy plan, so that work is about to kick off. We've been working with Welsh Government and have made an application to them, so that's a piece of work that the PSB will start to lead on. There's also discussions underway in terms of the sustainable travel agenda and how that over time morphs into more of a climate change, energy awareness, decarbonisation agenda, because sustainable travel is just one piece of the broader jigsaw. Our members will be aware, obviously, of the council's, the current administration's priorities around sustainable development. So that's a piece of work that's ongoing, Councillor Marshall. I think I'd ask Steve to respond, hopefully, to the latter point in more detail. But whatever aspects of that we can't address this evening, we'll certainly pick up and again have a further discussion at the PSB, because what's really useful for PSB members, I think, is to get different and fresh perspectives, and that's what scrutiny is all about, isn't it? It's about hearing your feedback and understanding what is important for elected members so that we can feed that then back into the PSB agenda. But certainly, Councillor Marshall, energy, renewables, high on the agenda of One Newport, and will become more so, I think, in terms of the next iterations of the wellbeing plans. And then on the second point, I said that maybe Steve could answer that one in a bit more detail. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Bev.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, all I would say by way of apologies, Councillor Berry. It's still not working, my hand's up, so I've turned the picture on and I've waved my hand.
Okay, Councillor Berry, is it relevant to, or what I want to do is pick up the end with you and Councillor Whitehead, because I know you're both struggling. So is it a question now? Do you want Steve to answer Councillor Marshall's then come in?
I think I'll take your option of leaving it till the end, okay, because there's a good flow going on here with question and answer, and mine is not specific to that. Okay,
I'll come back to you, Councillor Berry. Sorry, Steve.
All right.
And I'm probably not going to be able to give a detailed answer to Councillor Marshall's question, other than just say it's an absolutely good idea in terms of, you know, what we can do with the ticketing on public transport, and this idea of kind of green credits, or you know, so I think there's so much there to explore. A lot of that came out of the work, you know, the suggestions from the Commission, the work that was done, and I'm sure a lot of it is being explored. I probably need to speak to a few colleagues to get a more detailed answer. That I think you're due here. So if I could come back to you on that point, I certainly will. We'll take it away and respond.
Thank you for that, Steve. Councillor Marshall, you fine?
Yep, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Whitehead, are you back on board?
Chair, I keep crashing. I think I was literally halfway through the point I was making, wasn't it, about the hubs? Did you hear that?
To be honest, Kev, we didn't be totally. Do you want to start again? Is that okay?
All it was, I was just saying that, you know, obviously with the pandemic, ultimately there were, and we have to acknowledge there were some positives coming out. And I just, I'll always champion the work that the guys at the hubs do, and I think it did highlight how they've enamoured themselves even more with our community, because the residents have sat up, got involved, volunteered. So for me, it's been one of the, from a selfish point of view, I suppose, in my ward, it's been one of the massive positives, and hopefully post-pandemic that will carry on. And I would just like to wave the flag for all the guys in the hubs and the great works that they do. So I wanted to say that, Chair. Like, if I crash again, I'll see you on the other side.
Thanks, thank you for that, Councillor. I don't think it's a selfish thing. I think that's a fair point, and I think that has to be acknowledged of how much a lot of people have put in. So thank you for that, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Berry. Yeah,
thank you. Right, what I was going to say was the scorecard just chunks us. This is the plan we've seen tonight. Just chunks us through the plan, right? So we've seen it go from top to bottom, left to right, and page by page. But how do we flex that to accept emerging innovation? Because I've heard an awful lot tonight of contributors offering us innovative, alternative solutions to the issues that we've had.
Okay, Will, Steve, Bev, who'd like to come in?
Chair, before Will comes in as the chair of the Strategy and Performance Board, I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Berry, because part of the discussion this afternoon was all about the PSB is a box, it operates in a box, and it deals with the wellbeing plan and the monitoring of it. But if you think about the partnership work that has gone on through Public Service Board partners and wider, one more widely over the course of the last year, and none of that is captured in what's before scrutiny this evening. So if you think of the work that's gone on through the pandemic, through COVID, if we think about the responses and how we work as partnership members in response to crises events such as flooding over Christmas, I can pick the telephone up to to Steve and anybody in NRW that I need to on a Christmas Eve or Boxing Day to say we need assistance. And that for me is a public service board approach. And that, okay, some of that's responsive, but then within that lies, as you say in Councillor Berry, opportunities for innovation. And it's not always captured. So I think part of the discussion we were also having today was around the communications plan and the annual report. And what I think all partners want to do this year is trying to capture some of that in a different way. And at some point, Chair, I think that would be useful to bring back to scrutiny in a very different way to how we report a scorecard, which are snippets of videos of each of the PSB members that talks about the stories, the qualitative impact that the PSB as a whole has for the communities of Newport, because it cannot be, it is underestimated. So Councillor Berry's point is right, it's how we tell the narrative behind the scorecard. And, and again, back to Tracy McKim and the team, I think, that's certainly a very good point, Councillor Berry, that we pick up on.
Okay, can I just come back in there?
Sorry, Councillor Berry, I think Will's going to come in, and then if you want to...
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to echo Bev's points really about, we have been looking at whether we need to write more case studies or stories to bring in a bit of the human experience alongside the scorecard with the RAG rating and performance indicators, because I think that resonates with people. And I think what we've had to do with the wellbeing plan, as Bev has said, is really sort of just focus on the wicked issues, the priorities, the intractable issues that can't be solved through one organisation working in isolation. So whether it's young people not in employment, education, or training, or climate change, or whatever it is, it's, those are issues we all need to work together on with the community. So that's why they're in the wellbeing plan. But the kind of byproduct of that is that we're, in times of crisis like the pandemic, we're able to rely on mutual aid from partners, and that has been incredible, over the last 12 months. So as Bev says, we can now pick up the phone, speak to some in a local authority, health board, NRW, Newport. Even Steve Ward was offering up his facilities to run drive-through testing units, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So we've got that strength now in terms of the relationships between the partners that we're able to make that ask, which we probably didn't have 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah, just like to add that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, also I've got Steve Morgan. Did you want to add?
I was just want to add, thank you, Chair. Firstly, that point about partnership, in my sort of 30-year career, it's never felt more like a one public service than it does today, and it's only getting better. So I think, that I absolutely agree with the points that Bev and that Will have made. I just wanted to respond to the Councillor Berry's point on flex and innovation, and I think what I gave at the beginning of my update on the green and safe spaces, I mentioned, how kind of blown away I was around the size of the partnership, the network that's been developed, and the reach that it has. And although partners, may come up with ideas, the point of working with those networks, and Will's earlier point about co-productivity, true co-productivity, which involves citizen ideas, as well as sort of partners, is absolutely key to this. So those big networks, and I'm speaking on behalf of Green and Spaces intervention, but also on the wider networks that exist. Those networks are about sharing ideas, and and I'm a public servant, and we're all public servants in PSBs. Our duty is to listen to those and to try and develop those, because the best ideas come from the communities that we serve.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Berry, would you like to come back?
Yes, sorry for the delay. I'm trying to get because I don't have a raised hand, as I said before. My input was not meant to be a criticism. It was more meant to be a statement of opportunity. From what I've heard tonight, we are a very, very innovative council. I just wouldn't want all those good ideas and management speak get lost just to hide behind a plan that we've already had. My challenge really would be, because of the quality of the input tonight, how are we going to change, if we want to, the existing plan to make it more, how can I say, a direction that it should be going in? All right. Is that clear?
Yeah, cheers, that Councillor Berry. Will, did you want to come back?
Yes, so we do a sort of annual review of the wellbeing objectives, and I think we took those to the full PSB back in December. So I think we're we're constantly listening and looking to refine the wellbeing objectives within the plan. The only thing I would say is that the existing plan was based on quite a detailed wellbeing assessment or needs assessment that was carried out right at the beginning. If members can remember that far back, I think it's probably about 3 years ago now. So we did quite detailed social audits, produced ward profiles, which really highlighted what the issues were in local areas, and then we went out and had a big conversation with the public to get their views as well, sort of qualitative side of things, and all that. This is really down to Tracy McKim's team. We sort of synthesized all that information to come up with a list of priorities that we have. Now, that's not to say they're cast in stone, and we do, through the Strategy and Performance Board, constantly review those, and we do a formal annual review each year. So it is a really good point, and I think things have changed massively in the last 12 months, and new networks and new partnerships have been formed. So, probably, within the next 12 months, it is probably time for us to take to a big stock take as well, to make sure we are still going in the right direction post-COVID. So really well made points, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Councillor Berry?
Yeah, I would like to just reiterate that I was viewing the current situation with the innovation that's going on as an opportunity to improve. It was not meant to be a criticism, so please don't take it as that. This is a normal lifespan of a project, okay? And projects don't last forever. They all bend to meet new circumstances. My suggestion was that there is an awful lot of change occurred or occurring as well, and that it's an opportunity for actually making the plan more relevant, and that opportunity should be identified and worked on. But I think you've answered that question. In fact, I'm pleased by it, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. And actually, I think you're right. I think the question was answered, I think it was. I think it was a great question, and the answers, I think it was answered. But yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Berry. Now I've got Councillor Marshall for the last question.
Thank you, Chair. So it's just a general question. So the first one, which is linked to the second, is how has the PSB adapted during the coronavirus pandemic? And when normality does return, what differences or adaptations do you think will remain, as well as the strengthening of the organisation, as you spoke about earlier? And what do you see as the challenges moving forward in the short, medium and long term? Thank you.
So not too tough a question there, Councillor Marshall. Bev, Will, Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That feels like a PhD thesis, but yeah, I think a couple of things. Digital transformation has been huge. I think we need to build on that. I think, a lot of people have, as Bev alluded to in the sustainable travel presentation, have learned to be able to live without having to be so reliant on the car, and even drive back and forth meetings. The number of times I've, previous to the pandemic, you drive back and forth to Civic Centre, and now we can all meet together on Teams. So I think there'll be a big transformation in terms of sustainable travel. And also the point that I mentioned around strong, resilient communities. I think we've seen this huge outpouring of civic activity and goodwill and concern for people who are most vulnerable during the last 12 months. And I think, again, we'd want to build on that going forward. So I'd say those three things: digital transformation, sustainable travel, and the amount of civic activity we've seen during the pandemic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Will. Bev? Bev, have you anything to add?
Yeah, just to say, Chair, I think from the challenge perspective, clearly the economy heavily impacted by the pandemic, so there needs to be focus amongst the PSB on how we support the kind of resurgence of the economic footprint in Newport. But again, lots of opportunities. Don't want to be not negative. We have to be positive. We're going to come out with this. Educational attainment, clearly one for the PSB's agenda. But as Will said, lots of opportunities as well. And I mentioned doing sustainable travel, the relationships building, a huge, huge part of that. And also community resilience and community delivery. So I think, there's definitely more negatives than there are positives with all of this. But as a PSB, we have to focus on addressing the challenges, and we always do. We always address the wicked issues, but it's also about maximising the opportunities that we have at our feet.
And I think, Chair, that just to add to that, that one of the things that Guy Lacey spoke about at the last Strategy and Performance Board is around, you know, people who've lost their jobs or having to completely reinvent their futures now. And I think initially the right skills focus was on, you know, maybe young people, school leavers, you know, post-16 education attainment. And now I think the folks we have adapted in that sense, the focus is on, you know, people who've had a career, who've been furloughed or lost their jobs and now having to reinvent themselves. So they're quite alive to that at the moment, the right skills team. So I'm not sure if Nicola touched on that in her presentation, but yeah. And that obviously that's key to economic recovery.
Thank you for that, Will. Councillor Marshall?
Yep, thank you, Chair. It's really interesting all the time to hear how positive the relationships are. And obviously, as we know, partnerships and relationships are always tested at the most critical times like we currently face. So it's really, really positive to hear that the partnership is strengthening rather than weakening, and the really productive work going on. So thank you, everyone, for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. There's no other questions I see. So I sort of just want to sort of finish up here and sort of tidy it up as chair. So I've just noted a few things regarding the meeting, and I see Bev mentioned the word energy. I'll chuck in the word vibrant. I was lucky enough to attend the meeting on the 8th of December. I thought it was a great meeting. Again, the word Bev used, energy, and it was full of energy. And Steve Ward touched on it right at the start. Attending that meeting was also the Newport Youth Council, and I think sort of his point was very key right at the start of this meeting about how important that council is, because they are the future, and we have to hand the baton on. So I'd like to make that point. And Nicola mentioned about in COVID having to change direction a lot, and I think sort of I think we need to appreciate that. Because, you know, COVID has been something which has taken us all, and we've all got our own stories and things what's happened to us, and you know, it wasn't changing direction once, it was numerous times. So that goes into my final point before sort of I close this part of the meeting and at 7 o'clock. It is that for all the PSB members, and I hope and I'm confident that I speak on behalf of all my colleagues on this committee, that for all of you for tonight, but also for this message to go back for all your teams, we're very grateful and thankful for what you've done throughout COVID, and we're positive. We've got a real good positive vibe regarding the PSB board, that how this is going to move forward. So please take our thanks back to everyone from all of us. And we look forward to seeing this move forward. So thank you very much. Neil, can everyone leave now, Neil?
Councillor Clark, there's the
Sorry,
next
Chair,
item on the agenda.
No, I know that. I thought meant everyone. Everyone who could go home could go home.
Thank you, Chair. That's perfect. Thank you very much. Sarah, are you okay? Do you want me to stay or? Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Certainly not, Beth. It's up to you. Thank you.
Sarah, can you just bear with us 1 second? Is that okay?
Tell us the picture.
Okay. Neil, obviously, have we still got Councillor Whitehead? No, Councillor Whitehead's had to drop off. Councillor Hughes, how are you doing for time?
I have got a meeting at 7:30, Chair, but I'll try and hold on as long as I can, if that's okay.
Okay.
It's a branch meeting, folks, so it's yeah, complex.
So if we go on to the next part of the agenda, the EAS Business Plan 2021-2022. Now I know we've got Ed Price, we've got Sarah Davis, we've got Sarah Morgan, I believe we've got Hayley Davis-Edward. First of all, welcome and thank you for your patience. I think Sarah came on about 4:30 thinking, how long will this take? And here we are at 7 o'clock. And still hanging in there. And I know we've got Andrew as well. I think Andrew's come on as well. So we've had 2 hours, but thank you for your patience. I believe Ed is going to present this, I believe. If I would suggest go through the presentation and then we'll go to the committee for questions, if that's okay.
Sure. Councillor Clark, I'm just going to introduce the paper as well. You'll be aware that across the region, the 5 local authorities, Newport, Torfaen, Monmouthshire, Blaenau, Gwent and Caerphilly, work as a school improvement consortia with our school improvement professional partners, who are the South East Wales Education Achievement Service, we know fondly as the EAS. The EAS provide us with a wide range and a high level of professional support for our school leaders, our practitioners and our governing bodies to assist, enable and support our schools to achieve the best possible outcomes and well-being for our learners of all ages. So this evening, a new business plan will be presented for 2021-22, and this has been written and developed to address Newport-specific issues and takes into account the current pandemic. It's been a very strange year, of course, and potential recovery. So this evening, I'm going to pass over to Ed Price, who's the Assistant Director for the EAS, but I'd also like to welcome as well our Principal Challenge Advisors, who are Hayley Davis-Edwards and Sarah Davis.
Good evening.
And of course, Andrew and myself, as well as Hayley and Sarah, will be available for any questions you might like to ask. So thank you. I'll pass over to Ed.
And so just Sarah, thank you for that, Sarah. And Sarah and Hayley, pleased to meet you and welcome. And Andrew, you're here again.
Joachim, Chair, thank you, Sarah. I should be presenting a single screen with the report on for you. I'm not going to go through every word of this. I know I attended last year and went through, and I think we had a single item agenda where we spent 2 hours on this report with questions. There will be, and that was a very positive and productive meeting, and it's a carry on from that. One of the things I would say before starting, this is about partnership very much. We are the 5 local authorities school improvement service. We work in close partnership, particularly Hayley in the past as the principal challenge advisor and Sarah Davis now as the new challenge advisor with colleagues within the local authority. In terms of one element from the previous presentation, one of the key things I think is learning lessons from the pandemic and also moving forward with hope as well for our schools, and that perhaps some of the reporting out there about closing gaps and closing deficits is perhaps not the language that we're encountering with our school leaders at the moment, where they are more positive about addressing the needs of our learners in a very positive way moving forward. One recommendation, if you want to find out what we've have been doing in the past, there is a members briefing tomorrow evening on distance and blended learning for Newport, building on the one we did in the autumn, where there will be presentations from 2 Newport schools and what they're achieving in the lockdown that we've been having. Okay, in terms of the business plan, it is a requirement to present it to you to scrutiny before cabinet approval, which will be in April now, and then to report that to Welsh Government. I want to move on to focus on some of the key background. This is a plan which is to support, as Sarah says, the local authority statutory function in delivering your priorities, but on a regional basis and meeting the needs of individual schools on top of that as well. There are also some interesting questions in the last item about change, and this is designed, this is the high level plan which is designed, and the one last year worked out in this way with COVID, fortunately, to be flexible to the needs of individual schools. So we're required to submit it. It is particularly challenging, but we're working with school leadership across the region to meet the priorities of schools and their learners in terms of this plan. Under 1.3, it considers how schools will emerge strengthened in a way potentially from the pandemic, and all we can do as a local authority and regional school improvement service to support schools in that strengthening and supporting their learners on a collaborative basis. It's critical at this moment that the balance between challenge and support is right as well. Last year we were talking more about challenge, but it's critical that we remain sensitive to the needs of the schools at the moment to continue to be highly supportive, but intervening and being challenging where it's still required in terms of the provision for our learners and advocating for our learners. We need to build on what's worked well, particularly the virtual environment, and come along to that briefing tomorrow to find out more about that, see it firsthand, rather than me dwell on that now. I'll give one example of, a blended distance learning masterclass for teachers was attended by 300 in one sitting from across the region. We're working now in ways we couldn't work in the past when it comes to professional learning, in far more efficient ways and with a far greater reach than we've ever had before. It is about communication. The nuances of communication are absolutely critical in times when they are distance and you're not all together in the same room. We recognise the need to absolutely minimise bureaucracy as much as we can compared with within the requirements of statutory functions and Welsh Government. The note there on 1.9 that mid-year evaluation of the current revised plan is available and can be entered into the scrutiny process as well. It's worth commenting, and I touched on this last time, that the use of aggregate LA performance data was diminishing anyway in terms of Welsh Government. For Foundation Phase Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, there was no data collection in the summer, and there's highly unlikely to be any meaningful data collection this summer as well in 2021. The exams are not externally set. The exams are on school reported data. We will look at the data and support schools, but it's about the granular looking at it at a pupil level and the needs of pupils. To compare performance of schools is very, very difficult given the context of that data model and how it will be at the moment. The delivery is on a regional basis, but very much about the needs of schools. The PLO, the professional learning training, as we would have called it in the past, is what's absolutely critical. And we will continue to fund the schools, grant permitting, and I'll touch a little bit on the finance a little bit later. We're not expecting, there will be some efficiency savings there on grant, but we don't have the final picture from Welsh Government yet. I'll touch on that later. School development plans are the key to everything, and this is where I know many of you will be governors, and the role of governors coming in and oversight of that school development plan with the assistance of challenge advisors and LA officers as well. I'll move on there, that it's about, and 1.14, continuing to use a model where we use the best across the region to support, and there is an awful lot of brokerage in terms of seeing firsthand and matching up the right school with a school to be able to support others. We'll continue to do that, but we'll continue to do it on a funded basis. So it's not on an ad hoc random basis. Schools are funded to support others. And I know a year ago, there were an awful lot of really important questions from you about that and the impact it can have. And I think we concluded that it actually benefited both the receiving and the delivering school in terms of that model of support, rather than us in the centre delivering all the support. We coordinate and quality assure. So you're aware of the consultation groups on 1.16. They haven't changed from previous years. The key is that you have members sitting on 3 of those, and we've consulted with colleagues in the local authority on all elements of this. So moving on to I'll move on to the table. We're committed to partnership working, and you can see the 5 strategic priorities for the local authority, which are met elements of through this plan. The first one is related to resources, so not one particularly for us as the AAS, but the ones on the blended learning, the learning experiences, the quality of teaching and learning across our schools and settings. Our plan is entirely supportive in delivering that strategic priority for the local authority, as are the second one on literacy, numeracy, personal social skills, particularly the concerns, and you'll see reports today about vulnerable learners and how we support schools to address those needs, not necessarily address those deficits, address those needs of those learners as they return as individuals, rather than labelling them as entire groups as well, but monitoring those groups as well. And as the fourth one, monitoring and addressing some of the long-term impact on the physical, mental and health of pupils. There was a great comment that I heard from a head teacher of a secondary school, not in Newport, but another local authority earlier today, where she said some of the responses from our learners are not necessarily to this, which are stress reactions, are not necessarily physical and mental health problems for their future. They're entirely normal reactions to the uncertainty that the pandemic presents, and they will emerge from those if they're supported in the right way to deal with them, not in a negative way, but to move on and address and reflect. And the well-being strategies with colleagues in the LA are absolutely critical for our schools as well. And also, we are still in a position where we are looking at a new curriculum design, and in terms of curriculum for Wales, lots of questions as whether it's appropriate to delay that, but it is a Welsh Government strategy to continue currently with the delivery of curriculum for Wales, and many of our schools are actually firmly on the journey towards implementing that and moving already to those ways of working, and can continue and will continue, and have actually had time to have some elements of investing in the professional learning to be able to move on that journey as well. But that will continue to be a priority for us as well. In terms of regional priorities, I've touched on these. They support the above. The well-being elements, it's getting the bespoke and support to schools right. It is continuing on the quality of teaching and learning, particularly as we emerge more back into a blended model rather than the distance model it's been for 2 months now, and elements of the autumn. Continuing to focus on the groups of disadvantaged and vulnerable learners, and new groups of potentially vulnerable as well, that have emerged. Looking at professional learning curriculum for Wales, I have touched on. Professional learning key for everything, including elements of coaching and mentoring programs agreed on a national basis, regional basis, to come in all schools, and looking at promoting and further developing our regional and networks. It is our networks which are actually stronger than ever when they've been virtual, and we have seen more new faces and new people than ever with the virtual networks, and that's one element we will not let go of as we emerge from the pandemic. It's strengthened. The capacity of governing bodies, there's been a programme of virtual governing body. On Friday, we're actually announcing a governor conference virtual over 3 days, either side, 3 early evenings either side of Easter, and again sort of working with governors on their role of supporting schools. Developing the culture around accountability that moves with the direction Welsh Government are travelling in on accountability, and values a broader range of characteristics than just the end of key stage outcomes, which will not be available for a short period now anyway. We've got to get more intelligent on a richer range of data that we have in schools so that we can look at the quality, and embed that last one, our own internal evaluation models. The ambitions I'm not going to go through because they're almost a reversal of those aims, those areas we're looking at. I won't read them out, they're there for you. I've just highlighted on my copy some of the key elements, but that's our broad-ranging ambition. This plan is then supported by a detailed business plan, which will be published ready for the 1st of April, which responds to the detailed elements of it. I want to move on to risks, risks and just finance and resources before I finish. There are still uncertain financial grant projections. We're not anticipating anything significantly awry, and we feel that with those grant projections, with the go-ahead from local authorities, we are able to protect the grant funding into schools and the delegation rates into schools. But we are 3 months later than we would normally be with our final grant projections from Welsh Government because of their constraints, and we will not know those yet. So we are due to find out next week to be able to confirm with schools the figures. So that's very late compared with what it would normally be, and the remaining uncertainty surrounding the pandemic. We've reduced the risks to those significant ones, but a smaller list than it was in previous years. Final answer from me before I open for questions to all of us. The CAMA, the Collaboration Members Agreement, written in 2011, is still what governs the finance. But we are looking at efficiency savings and have offered up further efficiency savings this year, which is covered off in 3.4 with that reduction due to efficiency savings in the LA contribution from Newport. It is not just the LA contribution, it is those regional school improvement grants from Welsh Government, which fund large proportions of our work as well, and a relatively small element, third element, on the Government Support Service SLA to individual schools. It's worth noting that the delegation rate, it was 94% last year. It's an indicative 94.4% delegation rate of all grants this year. It's interesting to note as well, the AS staff profile has actually reduced by 53% in that time. That is a deliberate, planned, managed reduction over time, taking opportunities rather than any wide-scale redundancies or anything, and it reflects the way that we have far more partners within schools who are funded to do work across the region. And that final one, I've touched on it, still remains uncertainty with regards to the regional grant funding, but it's likely there'll be reductions to regional profile, but we are looking to passport the delegation rate through to schools to protect their development grant elements as they were last year. I will stop at that point rather than go through in as much detail as I did last year, Chair. I won't go through the whole business plan because you've had the opportunity to read that and ask questions on it. And with your permission, I'll open up to questions to any and all of us.
Ed, thank you for that, and thank you for that presentation. I thought it was very clear, and yeah, I really much appreciate. So I'm going to open it up to, as you said, open it up to the floor. But I know Councillor Hughes has to shoot off to another meeting. So would you like to come in, Councillor Hughes?
That's very much appreciated. I just want to acknowledge, really, it's a really thorough, solid report, and the work that the general work that ES does is incredibly complex. I've seen the complexity of the work they do more than anybody, I guess, this year, and I think one thing to acknowledge really is certainly from partnership working is the willingness, I think, to actually improve and build on issues and move forward, and I think I've certainly appreciated that. I also want to just acknowledge the work that the clerks do and the challenge advisors. I've worked recently with Hayley herself with the new Welsh school, and it's just to say how much we do actually value that part of the work that's done and the advice that they do actually give to schools. So it's just for me, certainly at this point in time, it's just to acknowledge that it's a strong report really, and in very challenging times. So thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Right, questions from the floor. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few, so I don't mind being split up, so I'll go by your lead. The first one was just basically in relation to the partnership side of things, and about basically I know locally we have COVID recovery plans that we have for Newport, and just how and if does it affect any other local authorities basically linking in or the staff and anything else like that, or is pretty much the ES happy and satisfied that they can work and get around all the 5 local authorities COVID recovery plans?
What I would comment is that our managing director meets with Sarah and her 4 colleagues virtually on a weekly basis, regularly, if not more often than that. There are regular meetings between principal challenge advisors and Andrew in terms of quality assurance, and we feel that there are very clear channels of communication which enable us to work in partnership to address those priorities. Yes, there are similarities, yes, there are differences, but they are not out of scope in the way in which we can work with our 5 partners.
So you wouldn't say there's necessarily challenges, there's pretty much a...
there are always challenges in partnership working, but it is about the relationships that are built of trust that are built up over a long period of time across the region, which is absolutely critical, and having those clear communication channels that are open. With, you know, we've had impromptu Teams calls that we will have quite regularly to go through the detail of elements, just as probably more regularly than we would have had in the past. Potentially the opportunity for short, sharp quarter of an hour meetings to discuss an issue is more readily available than ever.
Thank you. The other question I've got as well is around the mental health and pupils. Obviously, that's going to be quite a big thing there as we move forward into the recovery stage. Just wanted to ask, I'm assuming this will probably be Sarah, is there stuff ongoing for teachers? Because that's obviously not noted in this, but it's more for the pupils. But also, is there awareness raising training to governors as well? So they're on top of the ball when they go back or have their meetings to understand the complications, but also what they could do to maybe help support their school staff or teachers and head teacher moving forward.
I'll just start off really with the partnership-based work, because the support for mental and emotional health for children is exceptionally broad. But in order to avoid duplication, our LA Leads for Inclusion meets with the Vulnerable Leads EAS member of staff, who's Kath Bevan, and so Katie Rees is our head of inclusion. This ensures that there is no duplication and that we complement each other with our approaches. So, for instance, I can tell you that the EAS do provide mental health toolkit training for practitioners, for instance, and the local authority provides school-based counselling as an example, which is directly supporting pupils. But there's a whole raft of mental and emotional health work, but as I said, it's carefully constructed on a strategic level. I think Ed will be able to provide some further information about governors.
Yeah, on the governors, there is a specific session that's been in the programme for the last 2 terms, led by Kath Bevan on wellbeing, and detailed 1 hour professional learning session on that for governors. What we also have, we've recently introduced a distance and blended learning guidance for governors, but a key element of that is the wellbeing element. So that's been adapted across the autumn term, available now as well, and the distance and blended learning sessions, wellbeing is at the forefront of that as well. The Governor Conference, which we're planning to emerge from the pandemic, has 3 key themes. One is emerging strengthened from the pandemic. The second is distance and wellbeing, distance and blended learning. The third is wellbeing.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you. So on the forefront, thank you very much. I've got 3 other questions if you are happy for me, Chair.
Just one sec. I'm just going to check with Councillor Berry.
Yep.
So I know his hands up system isn't working. Councillor Berry, any question?
Hang on, still not working, but I can talk. Right. The question is, I'll put it in these terms. When you're at war, acts of valour are rewarded by recognised symbols, okay, like medals and so on. I'm very lucky in that I'm a governor at 3 schools, 2 of which are amalgamated, okay, so it's really 2. I've seen so much innovation, etc. I'm just wondering, is that captured anywhere, or is it just kept by the school itself? Because there are tremendous learnings that I've come across, and as I'm going to dare say, acts of valour. Okay, I don't know if it's a question or a fact, but I would suggest there's an awful lot that's gone on within the schools that might not be common knowledge, but it's not illegal. It's very good, actually, very professional, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
If I start an answer to that, I'm sure my colleague Sarah and Hayley will come on the work that you've been doing with schools on the review sessions that you've recently been undertaking. What I would say is over the autumn we developed a distance and blended learning website. There are a broad range of case studies on there which we've written in partnership with schools, which celebrate and, more importantly, share with other schools the successes and approaches. If you're a governor, there is the email that you get on a regular basis from us saying, here's the Supporting Our Schools website and the governance section. The new email now has actually got the link directly on the bottom of it in the rectangular box. Click on that and have a look in those sections. You've got access to both sites. Whilst others talk, I will put the email and the links up on screen so you know what I mean. Sarah, Hayley?
Yes, I can come in there, Hayley. Well, the fact is Newport schools have been primary contributors to the the blended and distance learning website through Task and Finish group, and they've also been key contributors to sharing practice with other schools across the region. And if you go on the distance and blended learning website, you'll be able to see Newport schools presenting regionally on their distance and blended learning offer and their innovative approaches. Tomorrow, as Ed said, we are doing a distance and blended learning session for members, and 2 of your very innovative schools will be sharing with you their work on distance and blended learning. In addition to that, we've been trialling a pilot called Celebrate, Share, Support and Review, where we've been meeting remotely with schools, and schools have co-constructed with us an agenda where they walk us through aspects of the distance and blended learning offer, and they celebrate with us the innovation and their high quality work. They offer to share with others that innovation, or we ask them and identify through that session opportunities where they may consider sharing that work with others. It also provides them with an opportunity to stop and reflect on what they've been doing over this really busy time, and also to refine their work, and more importantly for us as a region to learn from them and to refine our professional learning offer so that it is in line with the needs of the system at the moment, and that we are in line with the innovation, as you say, that is out there and should be celebrated across, nationally celebrated and held up as excellence, particularly around some negative media feedback that we've all experienced.
Just to say, thanks, Sarah, sorry, to add in, that's the link, just as an example, on an email. If you get an email from Governor Support, those 2 rectangles are linked to the website. This is the actual distance and blended learning website, where it's aimed predominantly at practitioners, but fully bilingual. There are a range of case studies, many of which are from Newport schools and what they've done. So that is worth looking at.
Yeah. Like I say, I think my point was that an awful lot of innovation has gone on. I'm sure it's been regulated and controlled. I'm sure it's gone through relevant scrutiny. I'm not worried about that. All I'm saying is there's an awful lot that has taken place. I just hope that somewhere, somehow it's captured and rewarded accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. And just to add to that, I think you're right, Councillor Berry. I think sort of, you know, we've gone through tough times, we've struggled through it, and sort of we sometimes don't reflect of actually what we've achieved. You know, especially I think the pace of life and things like that. So I think Graham or Councillor Berry, you made a great point, and I think the answer, but I think that's necessary because, you know, it moves so quickly that we have to recognise what's been done.
Yes.
We really do, and I think that's key. So yeah, great question, and thanks for the answers. Councillor Linton, did you have a question at all, or are you okay?
No, I'm fine, thank you. I'm just listening.
Thank you, Councillor Linton. Okay, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. So the next one linked into what's been discussed anyway, but going back to normal, so hopefully to some form of normality with blended learning. Obviously, at the moment, it seems to be a vast mixture depending on pre-recorded blended learning and actual live blended learning. So basically looking at that type of thing. But moving in the future, Do we kind of know yet if there'll be changes to looking at blended learning in the future? Things like learning pathways and things to, you know, have we learnt lessons that we will look to adapt to in the future? Has there been any benefits of COVID in that light to see how we can change and work differently, and with you as partnerships as well?
I'm happy to take that.
Go on, Haley.
Happy to, well, at least start, Ed, and you can add any other thoughts, and you, of course, Sarah. Absolutely, and this is the very conversation, Councillor Marshall, that's taking place in schools, you know, and between head teachers and between the EAS and the local authority and heads. And we, in our recent CSSR, or Celebrate, Support, Share and Refine sessions that Sarah has been describing, really common for schools to say this has changed our practice forever. There are things about this that we have to keep. There are things that are really conducive to learning, that suit the learners really well. You know, phrases like we'll stay in the blend, we'll be in the blend, you know, it gives us a flexibility for children who like to work in that way. Certainly collaboration between schools and potentially FE colleges, and beyond that into HE. All of those doors are now open. Nobody's scared of the technology anymore. So just to reassure you, this dialogue is happening, and it isn't just the forward-thinking schools. All schools are thinking along these lines now. I don't know if you want to add to anything to that, Ed or Sarah.
Sorry, Ed. I would just say, if you go and look on the Distance and Blended Learning website, there's a really good presentation on sixth form collaboration. It's actually Philly schools talking about how they've always had to collaborate in terms of sixth form provision, but how that has been further refined, strengthened, and it is something that they will not go back and shy away from. But, you know, I think it opens conversations up, as Hayley's just said, about wider opportunity of collaboration into FE and into other providers, so that, you know, they can be part of the learning offer then, which can be broadened to our young people in our schools.
Yeah, so it becomes less of a staged move, more of a natural flow. Yeah, I like it.
Thank you. That sounds really positive, and hopefully opening up opportunities where maybe certain subjects might be out of sync for some schools to provide, and they can access. So that sounds really positive. Thank you. I've got two more, if the chair will allow me to go ahead.
Absolutely, Councillor Marshall. Just one thing I'd like to add there, though, Hayley. I thought the thing was all schools. I thought that was the key there when you said all schools.
Absolutely.
And that's what this is about. So thanks, Hayley. So sorry to jump in, Councillor Marshall. There, yeah, sorry. There you go.
No worries at all, Chair. It's your prerogative as Chair. No worries at all. The next question I've got is basically just reading about the risks over finance, that side of things, potentially moving forward, about how the grants and stuff are moving forward, and not sure where we currently stand there. What is your perceived future that you believe, and what is the current situation? Like, have you had all your staff within throughout COVID furloughed, or has any furloughed assisted you in cutting costs or anything like that? Just what is the financial situation that you think you're going into, and do you think as partners that you'll be able to do the work that you're planning to do?
No furlough as a public funded organisation. That wouldn't be eligible under the rules, but everyone has been in work, but working in a different location. We've discovered during this that we are able to function as a company very much virtually. It was interesting when just before we started and before lockdown, Geraint, who's my director and boss, and I were planning a disaster recovery day where we had one day with the office closed. We've had a bit of a longer period than that, and we have managed and adapted, as have our partners in the local authority. In terms of the delivery model to schools, it's enabled us to be busier than ever, with, rather than perhaps long day inputs, longer periods of professional learning, but to have short, sharper, more people in the right place at the right time, interventions in schools in that way, critical meetings in schools in that way as well as the broader professional learning example. So everyone's been working effectively. Some efficiency savings on travel.
Yeah, can I also raise something? One of the Newport schools, for example, we've only got a very, very small team of core challenge advisors because we use partners as the majority of our school improvement advisors as challenge advisors. So what we've done is we've, for example, one of our core team challenge advisors worked for over a term in one of your primary schools to support additionality in terms of staffing around a teaching commitment. Some of our advisory teaching staff are working for extended periods in schools. So, for example, Newport High School have got one of our English advisors who works there 2.5 days a week, a maths advisor that works there a full day, a science advisor who works there 2 days. So our resource has actually gone into schools to support staffing levels, as well as to promote coaching and mentoring opportunities for school leaders and for teachers within the classrooms.
Thank you very much. And I believe last question for myself there is, obviously with this whole pandemic as partners, it was just keen to understand ways that, examples of how you've had to adapt in the partnership together. What have you learned as partners, and what do you think will be kind of bettered in the future because of going through this deep and challenging times?
I think it's been one of the things that's been a revelation to myself and probably to many practitioners is that good learning and quality learning is quality learning, irrespective of the medium. Wherever children are, whether they're seeing their teacher in person or whether they are working on a pack that's literally a paper pack, because they don't have access to digital resources, or whether that child is interacting with their teacher not even in a live session, but in chat. And I know, Councillor Marshall, that you know the different forums as a governor yourself and how that works. But children respond to and learn well when the learning is authentic and stimulating and engaging for them. And I think teachers, I've been amazed at how teachers have been so nimble, not just adapting to the new technology, right? That in itself is, the new platforms, but actually thinking through as professionals the craft of teaching in a different platform and coming up with innovative and, quite frankly, amazing ways of thinking, how am I going to get this bunch of 6-year-olds today, or this bunch of 16-year-olds? What am I going to do to really get them on board? And in doing those pilot sessions with schools in the recent month, absolutely blown away by just the creativity of schools and their nimbleness. So the learning for me has been, learning is learning is learning. Good teaching is good teaching is good teaching. And it's odd, but actually it's shown that it doesn't matter if the classroom's falling down, really. It doesn't matter what your environment is if the learning is stimulating for the child and captures their imagination. It's one of many things. I'm sure Sarah and Ed will have other things.
I think also the fact that we're able to offer professional learning, as Ed has pointed out earlier, to a larger group of people, but also that we're able to offer on-demand professional learning. So, for example, if you were unable to come to this evening's training, you could access it on demand at a point in time where it was irrelevant to you and you had the time to do it. So nobody's excluded from professional learning. It's been much more inclusive, and as has attendance at network events. Again, nobody's being penalised because they can't attend a live training session. And I think that's important, and it's something to hold on to in the future, so that everybody there's an equality of access to professional learning across the system.
That leads on to just one point nicely in terms of partnership working. And in the early days when we were putting on elements of professional learning, schools, even though it was on a come if you are ready, come when you're ready, come if you're able, because we know as a head teacher you might be dealing with a particular crisis that day in school, there was a feeling that, oh, we've got to be there, we've got to have those messages. So from Sarah's point about us making that available at a later stage, but also I'm actually absolutely communicating with clarity in terms of not putting in on pressures just by offering something. And understanding that dynamic as well. We knew that it was on a voluntary basis, that schools would come and they would determine the priority for certain elements. but it wasn't always perceived like that. So useful feedback into the system from our partners in schools helped us clarify that.
Thank you very much all from my aspect, and can you please thank you all your staff and officers as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Linton, any final questions? Councillor Berry, any final questions?
No questions, just a thank you to the whole team, from the sharp end to the management end. You've done well.
Thank you so much. That's much appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. I'm very lucky as chair to have the committee I've got to ask the questions. We've just seen that previously, and we can see it there. So I really haven't got any questions. All I've got to say is that, as chair, and again, taking the liberty of saying this, I think sometimes when we're not in a situation, we think, can we adapt? And I think you've proved that you can adapt. Yeah. I think that's a hell of an achievement. I really do, because we all think about it, but I think it's been proven that you can. And I think what you've done is you've been so bizarre. You've been robust, but also very flexible. So you've got the best of both worlds. Yeah. And I think I'm really just reiterating what my fellow councillors said and the fellow committee is a massive thank you. Again, touching on about reflecting and looking back. I think in years to come and what's gone on, it will show what you've done. Yeah. I really do, and I think in the short term it's fantastic. But I think in the long term also it will show what's gone on and what's been done. So again, Councillor Berry said it, and Councillor Marshall, a big thank you to all of you. And first of all, yourselves on here tonight at quarter to 8 on a Wednesday, but also to all your team. Please take the message back. A massive thank you. And again, that's really this part of the agenda finished. And just thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Neil, will you come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we just take some comments and any recommendations that you want for the two committee items. So first of all, with the PSB report, did the committee felt that the information they were given for this was sufficient? And is there any kind of comments or recommendations you'd like me to take back?
Yeah, just Neil, just quickly, guys, if you want to take your cameras off. I know, Mal, you're looking to disappear soon, so if we can do this, but yeah, Malcolm, all put your cameras on. Sorry, let's see everyone and let's have an open meeting here. So yeah, sorry, Neil, what was that? What about going back? Sorry.
In regards to the PSP report, did the committee feel that they were given sufficient information for this, and is there any particular comments or recommendations that they'd like to pass on?
I think comments-wise, to the chair, if you don't mind, I think it was really good to hear the strength of the PSB, especially hearing about it's strengthened, and any type of partnership is obviously during such stressful times. It's really good to hear that their partnership has strengthened. That the fact that they can ring each other, like when there's floods or something like that, there and other issues that they're showing on the phone. They have those links and really good resources, but other things as well about the fact of adaptability. We've just heard about it on the EES, but they have been really good by the PSB side about adaptability and looking about how they move forward in the recovery, changing the ways that they might conduct meetings, about the way that they become even more greener, just about the way of working. So I think, even though we're in a very difficult situation and times, I think the whole fact of what we've seen from my perspective is a really clear sign of really excellent partnership working from my perspective.
Well, I can endorse that if you don't mind, because I've been around a bit and I've seen all sorts of crises in industry and everywhere else, right? I would say that we have a very good team here. Excellent doesn't come into it. It's not a word I use all that often, but they're very good, very accommodating, and full of, I'll say, meaningful knowledge rather than criticism. Okay, long may it be that way.
I think that's right, Greg. I think also touching on what Steve said, I think one word also, I think they get what happened. They gave me, I'm sure, confidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that it wasn't, you didn't feel like they were sort of just saying it, but you felt confident with what they were saying. And I think sort of that they did feel all joined up.
Yeah. They were believable.
Yeah.
You can't always say that.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that, of another example, and just building off what you said, Chair, is basically the whole thing of, I think someone didn't come, I think one of the carries didn't come today, but someone else was able to jump in because they had that knowledge as partners to be able to jump in. And that shows, again, another true example of that partnership and close bonds, that they can just jump in, you know, and basically give us the answers that we need because they have that answer because of the fact that they are close working.
Yeah. Good teamwork, right?
Yeah, I find that they come in and help us. I know I went on about Ringland, but it did all link in. But they do come in and use the facilities in Ringland, especially with this COVID incident that's going on. So they, when an Iron Bevan come on board, and they come in touch with the councillors and through the council itself, and it's all linked in. So they're using the facilities over here for testing. I've made some points for them how they can go out in the community more and interact, so as we get a better take up of this the vaccines, so and to get tested. So I think it is really good, and it is coming together. As I say, with the greener issues as well, it is a little bit late for myself in our area, but it is nice to see. We can't build on every green bit of space, and to know that they are linking in, it is really good.
I think, again, touching on what Malcolm has just said there, I think sort of because it flows all the way down, they're not just saying it at this level. As I said, Malcolm's actually seeing it on the ground.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. That's a very good analogy. It doesn't always happen like that. We are fortunate at this point in time.
Yeah, agree.
I want to share as a point to add in about what partnerships and people they are utilising in communities to address some of the problems of harder to reach communities, because we spoke about the kind of harder to reach BME community, about basically the whole COVID situation, about how they're going to come out socially, economically out of this situation, and about how they utilise and maybe review not so much their own partnerships, but review who they bring on board for various things, and start looking out at who is in organisations like councillors, like religious groups and stuff like that. Who do we have networks with, not just who we are all of partners that are already in there. I think that would be a really important thing to move forward to kind of push forward some of the aims and objectives moving forward.
Fair point. Fair point. Neil, you happy with that or more? Or?
No, as long as the committee's happy with that, if there's no other comments or recommendations for this item, we can just go on ahead with the EAS comments.
Okay. Steve, do you want to leave that? Steve, do you want to lead that? Because I know a lot of the questions.
Sorry, Chair, is it right if I leave? Is it right if I leave now?
Mal, have you got anything to add on the EAS?
No, I haven't. No more.
Mate, you have a good evening.
Cheers, mate.
Thank
you all. Bye. Bye.
Nice, guys. So take care. Bye-bye.
So, Steve, you sort of led on the EAS. Anything to?
Again, it was really good to hear the strength again of the partnership. I think it was really interesting to hear about the adaptability again. So basically looking at ways that they're looking at the whole situation and what they're learning. There's clear indication that together they are learning about the blended learning, how to move forward, opening up new opportunities, which was a kind of something that I've been thinking previously, you know, pre-COVID, about how we open up doors to allow young people that might have barriers, that they might prefer one school but they can't, you know, go there because it's not a subject there that's available. And the fact that things like this, because of COVID, that they're actually working together to try and see how we can move forward in COVID recovery to actually benefit the pupils' outcomes all in all, as you know, outcomes and opportunities available to young people. Again, feel strong partnership in there. There's no real concerns. They both say together that they feel happy with each other. The fact that, you know, from the past few years of being on partnerships, that it just seems to be stronger and stronger. There's hardly any kind of gripes or anything like that. They're very much one voice. They know what's happening. Both organisations, so the council officers and EAS, know our schools. You know, that it is very clear evidential, and that they do speak with each other about issues. You know, and basically around that, but it's just good to know, you know, that there is clear and understanding of each other, but a very, very, again, strong partnership.
Crikey, what's left to say? All I can tell you is that historically it hasn't been that way. Innovation has been a school-based thing. Don't tell them over there, we'll look good, right? But I'm telling you now that I've seen many instances of cross-school sharing and professionalism, and that can only be good. Dare we lose it? No, but how the hell are we going to maintain it as it goes forward and we come out of the pandemic? How are we going to do that? I just hope they remember the good old times when they all worked together, one voice, one direction, and quick to help, all right?
Agree.
Yeah.
I think, through the chair again, I think one of the factors to raise forward, in my own opinion, as a governor, I think it's just very important for other governors to have awareness of the situation in meetings, to understand the well-being of students. I think it should be on every head teacher's report if it's not already, and also looking at potential training that's there to understand, you know, what the schools can do, what facilities are there, so that they do know before there's a major issue or anything like that happens, that there is clear understanding from everyone on board, that you know, as said, what services are involved and what support can be put in place for them.
But as a positive point.
As a positive, point.
Yeah.
I got to admit that I've not seen any major negatives during my touch with the schools that I am a governor of. I have seen lots of positives. I just hope that they remain, and that there is sharing between other schools on the highlights and the lowlights of what's happened with this. We've been to war.
Yeah,
that's what's
I agree. Neil, have you got all that?
Yeah, yep, I got a thanks committee. Just also just going back to the PSB report. We included as the last appendix the PSB minutes from the 8th of December committee meeting. I was just wondering if the committee were happy with them, just to give the sign off, really.
As in what was part of it, or actually what's in the minutes took place?
Yeah, it was just the minutes, that's all. You know, the meeting that you attended.
Yeah, I'm happy with that because I was there.
Thank you.
I think it's vote to accept that we receive them, isn't it? So I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I'll go with.
Yeah, so as long as the committee's happy with that, you know, I can take those comments and recommendations.
So, Neil, can I add something else in? Just like wherever young people can be involved, to please get them involved, especially on the council side, because I think from the PSB side, just off when I was reading the last part of the minutes, I think it's really important to make sure that they are our future, to make sure that they are heard wherever they can be, decision making. And I think with them on the PSB, excellent. But if there's any places that we can put them on council or anything like that, like, you know, to be observers, to give us a more open view, you know, please put that forward as well. Thank you.
And so that's for the Youth Council.
It is. Thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, Councillor. That's noted.
Right, I think that's it now.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I'll send those comments and recommendations off to both report writers.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it, Chair. The next meeting is on the 22nd of April. As I was telling the Chair Committee, we currently are waiting for reports to come back from Tracy McKim. So as soon as I know what report will be coming to the committee, I'll let all you guys know straight away.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Anything else, Neil?
No, that's everything on my side, Chair. So as long as everyone's happy, we can end the meeting.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ellie and Pamela and yourself, Neil, for, you know, it's 8 o'clock. And I did speak to Neil during the week. And I go, how long do you think the meeting was going to go on to? He said 8 o'clock. So I don't know if he's had a bet somewhere or something. But it's very odd. He predicted the exact time the meeting's going to end.
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank it's 8 o'clock. It's Wednesday night. I just want to thank all of you for but I thought it was a blooming good meeting.
It was a good meeting again, Chair. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I just think it was a good meeting. So it was a pain. And Ellie, if you learned anything, I'm not sure, but that was a good meeting.
It's been great. Thank you for letting me attend. It's been a brilliant experience.
No worries. And thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all, and stay safe and see you soon.
All right. Cheers, team.
Take care, girls,
Bye.
ladies. Bye.